Okay, so it's 7:03, and I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Wellfleet Select Board of Tuesday, June 25th, 2019, at the Wellfleet Senior Center. We will start with announcements, open session, and public comments. Please note that public comments must be brief. The board cannot, will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. So I'd like to begin our meeting with acknowledging and letting people know that Roger Putnam died on June 20th. He served the town a long time in many ways. Select person, ZBA, chair of the ZBA, Charter Review Committee, search committee for the town administrator, and those are just the boards that I know about without researching. He was an outstanding and dedicated public servant. He worked tirelessly and endlessly for the love of this town. He was full of wisdom and experience, and one of my favorite things about him was that he had a great sense of humor, and he would use colloquialisms and phrases that I had no idea what he was talking about, where they came from. I think they came from the 1800s or something like that. I don't know, but he was a charming man, and his death leaves an empty space in Wellfleet. He will be missed. And then my other announcement, I want to thank Helen Miranda Wilson, yes, for her magnificent, magnanimous donation. I believe everybody here should know what I'm talking about. Her generosity has preserved the environment, the economy, and the town that we all love, and that this shows how much she truly loves it. I commend her for her foresight and her devotion, and thank her.
I'll say you're welcome, and then I'll say that I can't talk about this until the closing.
Okay. Does that go for everything to talk about? Anyhow,
Too bad.
Thank you.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't.
So,
thank
but
you,
thank
Janet.
you, thank you. It's
thank you.
Yeah, and
Yes,
hard work in many
no,
ways.
Madam Chair, yeah, I am going to say
I hear
something.
you. I hear you.
No, I'm going to say something. Yeah.
Do.
So, let's not forget two things. One is town meeting voted to buy this piece of property, and then the voters at the election ballot.
Yes.
Yes.
So thanking them too.
Yes.
Yes. We all work together, even though sometimes it doesn't seem that way. But we do. Any other announcements, comments from the board?
Just one announcement from me, not an announcement, just a reminder that if anyone else would like to make a donation to the purchase of the Whyto Trust property, we do have a gift fund set up in the town, so anyone could contribute to that gift fund towards the purchase.
And we're going to set up a gift fund in general. I know we have it for designated things, but I think it's a good idea to just set up a general gift fund.
I can put that on the
You
agenda.
never know when the feeling's going to strike.
I'm not sure we can do that, but I have an announcement.
Okay.
So the person that really needs to be thanked here is Barbara Austin, who has, after 20 years, resigned from the Shellfish Committee, not in a snit, but because she has a lot else going on. And she has done more for this town than almost anybody I know, just by serving on that board so well for so long. And she is to be thanked.
She is. We could even write a little commendation for her.
And I have another announcement that's kind of very hot and heavy. So Roger Putnam, up until the last minute, served efficiently and well on the Cape Cod Commission. He was our representative.
Oh, yeah, gosh.
And there is now an open seat there for the town of Wellfleet. There are 19 different members of the Cape Cod Commission, and it's very, very important that we are represented on it. And I called the regulatory sort of director there and got an exact description of what that job is. So if anybody is interested in doing it, you can reach me through the town website at my town email address. Give me your phone number and I'll give you an earful of what it takes. It's not that much, but the specifics are important.
Thank you. Thank you for remembering that. Anyone else?
Well, Roger Putnam also served on the Assembly of Delegates.
Yeah.
But he was a dedicated public servant. And I saw him 4 days before he died. And we had already planned our next visit. And I got the call 4 days later. But he's a wonderful, generous spirit, and he will be missed. Thank you for remembering him, Janet.
My pleasure. Anyone else? Any comments or announcements from the audience? Yes, Mr. Barocas, please go to the microphone and identify yourself.
I also loved him. He was, like he said, a funny, funny man, warm. But that's not what I'm up here to talk about. I'd like to talk about my vote at town meeting on Article 13 and what happened to it. And by that I mean, I went to that meeting planning to vote against it.
So could you please identify what Article 13 is?
The purchase of the land,
Okay.
that was, and Helen's
Built,
contribution to it, and she should be commended for that as well. I had planned to vote against it because I didn't like the idea that we were being brushed. And frankly, it felt a bit chaotic. I spoke to that at town meeting, and I was assured, and evidently it's on tape, I was assured that there would be an appraisal. And now my vote didn't count. I feel like we should have another vote, a special town meeting, or do an appraisal. I understand that these appraisals are not always terribly accurate, and this is a particularly difficult one, but there's a process that should take place. And I think it's important. I expect more from Wellfleet than our current federal government. And that means transparency. It means following the pro forma regulations that we have in place, or just doing the right thing. I feel like my vote was taken away from me, and I'm sure I'm not alone. But I think we should do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Martha.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Martha Heavener. I am a Wellfleet resident, but I'm here tonight representing the Cape Cod Commission. Before I get into my rather light announcement, I'll just say that we also miss Roger at the Commission, and he was just a interesting and brilliant and unusual man, and we miss him. But what I'm here tonight to do is wanted to invite you all to the upcoming 6th annual One Cape Summit conference that will be held on July 29th and 30th at the Wequassett Resort in Harwich. We really hope that you can make it, or some of you can come. If you're familiar at all with the summit, you'll know that every year it covers topics that are really important to the Cape, and this year we'll be discussing water quality, coastal resiliency, economic development, housing, regional infrastructure, and an assortment of other issues that matter to the region and to Wellfleet. I dropped off some invitations for the board. There's also, on the second day, on the 30th, there is a breakfast that's being sponsored by the Cape Cod Selectmen's and Counselor Association. And at that breakfast, the president of the Conservation Law Foundation and the executive director of the Cape Cod Commission will be speaking. And if you'd like to go to the breakfast, you do need to RSVP. There's additional information on the Cape Cod Commission website. And that's it. And thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? Yes.
I just wanted to, on behalf of the Bike and Walkway Committee, thank the police department.
You have to identify yourself for the
Rebecca
cameras.
Noble. The Bike and Walkway Committee just wants to thank the Wellfleet Police Department and the Rec Department, and especially Christy O'Campbell, because we had the first annual bike fair on June 8th, and it was a great success, and we appreciate all these departments working to make it happen.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the audience? Yes.
I am Pam Grandin, and I'm a part-time resident Wellfleet taxpayer. At town meeting in April, Wellfleet taxpayers voted no to Article 37, old shellfish shack renovations, to see if the town should spend funds on renovating the building. The Board of Selectmen recommended 5-0. The Finance Committee did not recommend 5-1. Because of a lower voter turnout on the evening of the vote and a close vote, a group of concerned community members have come together to explore ways to preserve the old shellfish shack and to further rehabilitate and repurpose it for community benefit, in keeping with the express condition of the deed to the town in 1931, that the premises shall be forever used as a public town park for bathing and other recreational uses and for no other purpose, and shall always be maintained by the grantee in a reasonably neat condition. Currently, the building does not pose any immediate danger or health hazard to the community. We respectfully ask that as a town steeped in history of reusing its buildings, the board consider holding decisions about its future use and allow this community group to present a proposal to repurpose the shellfish shack. Thank you for your time and for your dedication to Wellfleet, Mayo Beach, and its history.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments from the audience? All right, moving on. The next thing is licenses, and we have a one-day liquor license for July 14th and August 4th for the Wellfleet Harbors Actors Theater. Is anyone here from the Wellfleet Harbors Actors Theater? Nope. Okay, any discussion, questions from the board? Any from the audience? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the applications for one-day liquor licenses for the Wellfleet Harbor Actors Theater on July 14th, 2019, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., and on August 14th, 2019, from 4 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. So moving on, oh, no, not yet. Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee. Where's Ryan? He's been here every time. Anyhow, this is to approve or appoint Ryan Curley to the Wastewater Management Committee.
Actually, we're on the local comprehensive plan first.
You know, oh, all right. I have new glasses, and it really messes the whole portion up. Okay, appointments to local comprehensive plan committee. We have Jan Plowey and Jay Norton. Is Jay Norton here?
I did not ask either one of them
Okay.
to be. We previously had Mary Beth
yeah.
Rodman as representing the schools, but she's unable to attend the meetings, so Jan has agreed to attend the meetings on behalf of the schools.
Okay.
And Paul Lindberg was previously appointed representing the Department of Public Works, so we've asked Jay to step in for Paul.
Oh, okay. So any questions from the audience? Comments? Then may I have a motion?
I move to appoint Jan Plowey and Jay
Plowey.
Jan Plowey and Jay Norton to the local comprehensive planning committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, unanimous. Okay,
Ryan
That's
is
not
not
funny.
here.
and Ryan's not here, but may I have a, so he's been here before, wanting to be appointed to the Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee. Any questions, comments from the board? Yes.
Yes, when we heard that he was applying, and he applied quite some time ago, I sent him a great deal of material that the people on that committee have produced or are aware of, and he read all of it, and he did email the select board that he had done so. Mm-hmm. And he would have attended a meeting, except they hadn't really had a meeting during this time. I'm very happy that he's applied. He's a known person to me, and he has shown up. There was sort of glitches about seeing him, so I would be willing to,
Yeah.
move and approve if the rest of us want to do that.
Yes,
Okay.
and I
ahead.
understand that he's very good with data and very thorough.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments from the audience? May I have a motion from the board?
I move to appoint Ryan Curley to the Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee for a term to expire on June 30th, 2020.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, unanimous. And now, now we have a very long list of reappointments to committees and boards. And these are all reappointments. So after reading the list off,
Madam Chair?
just wait, after reading the list off, we can move these as a group unless somebody from the board or the audience has an objection. So do you want to make that motion and read the list?
I do, but I have one thing to put before you.
Okay.
What we did not know up until today, and I was confused about why the two applicants for reappointment as regular members to the Shellfish Advisory Board were not on here. The reason was that one of them hadn't turned in his application to become a regular. He's been an alternate. However, today he did that, unforeseen by you. I'm wondering, given that these are two people who have been serving on the Shellfish Advisory Board, and the chair recommended both of them to become regulars, and she has resigned, and there is room for two more regulars, and they're going to meet, they're scheduled to meet on July 3rd, so it would be a good idea if they could be appointed before that, given that even though they're not on this list, we did know about them wanting to have that change, and now technically they can because the one that hadn't applied for it has now applied for it. How do you feel about that?
Madam Chair,
Well,
may
it's
I?
not on the agenda, so I'd probably want to know who they are and if they were there. But what were you going to say, Kathleen?
They're not on the list, and this list has been out there and on the website, so I think that they need to come back. I don't
Okay.
want to just add them.
Yeah.
This is a public thing, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and they can still go to the meeting, just not vote, right? They can still go to the next Shellfish meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, please tell them, both of them have their application in?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, and they were up for it a while ago, but they didn't understand. They were up for reappointment as alternates. They just didn't understand they had to apply to be regulars. See?
Yeah.
Yeah. They were up for reappointment. They've both been serving on it for ages. Tom Segia and Dave Seitler. He hasn't been serving for ages, but he's been on there for a year or two, right? Yeah. Anyway, let's not
Yeah,
worry
let's
about
just do it next time.
Yeah, okay.
Follow.
Madam Chair, do you want me to
Decor.
read the list?
Yes, please, and the motion, yes.
So these are for reappointments. Bike and Walkways Committee, Ned Oliver. Board of Assessors, Nancy Vale. Board of Health, Ned Piccarello. Board of Water Commissioners, Thomas Flynn. Building and Needs Assessment Committee, Jay Horowitz. Cable Advisory Committee, Tom Cole, Mia Baumbarton, Deborah McGee, Jennifer Wortkin. Cape Light Compact, David Mead Fox. Commission on Disabilities, Fred Gettner. Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee, Kurt Felix. Conservation Commission, Barbara Bresinel, John Kumbler. Council on Aging Advisory Board, Brian Quigley, Evelyn Savage, Patricia Shannon, Robin Slack. Cultural Council, Josie Anderson, Gigi Lakovsky, Rhonda Fowler, Judith Kumbler. Energy and Climate Action Committee, Robert Shapiro. Historical Commission, Lucas Manning. Local Housing Partnership, Judy Taylor. Marina Advisory Committee, Fred Felix, David Stamatis, Alice Inacusa, John Wolf, Martha Wilson. Natural Resources Advisory Board, Laura Hewitt, Thomas Slack. Open Space Committee, Bruce Herder, Robert Jackson, John Kumbler, Thomas Slack, Lynn Southey, Fred Streams. Recreation Committee, Rhonda Fowler, Kerry Cox. Recycling Committee, Jaya Carlson, Jane Sharp. Register of Voters, Andrea Pluhar. Taxation Aid Committee, Manny Smith. Zoning Board of Appeals, Bruce Drucker, and Manny Heilinger.
Is there
I
a
would like
second?
somebody to make the
Second.
motion.
Oh. I move to reappoint the committee and board members as listed on the reappointments list from the principal clerk to the respective committees and boards as listed for terms as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any from the audience? May I have all in favor? Okay, great. Moving along.
Oh, please go get sworn in at Town Hall. You still need to do that.
Yeah.
Yes, so all those appointees that are listening and aren't here, please remember to do that. So we got 3 to 4, okay. This is moving along quite rapidly. Use of town hall, use of town property, town hall driveway on August 3rd, AIM Thrift Shop. Anyone here from AIM? There we go.
Hi, I'm Lydia Vivante for the AIM Thrift Shop, and this will be our 10th annual AIM Art Sale. All the proceeds benefit health-related organizations on the Outer Cape and Cape-wide. It's all volunteer run. There will be no food or beverages. It's a free event. It's from 8:30 in the morning to 10:30, so you have to get there early to find bargains. And we're also accepting art donations and donations of art supplies at the AIM Thrift Shop right across from Town Hall, 305 Main Street, between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., Monday through Saturday.
Any questions from the board? From the audience? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the use of the town hall driveway on August 3rd from 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. with the rain date of August 10th by the AIM Thrift Shop, subject to the conditions, if any, as listed on the application form, for no fee.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unanimous, Courtney. And now moving on to the use of Baker Field on August 5th and 9th, 12th and 16th, 9th and to the 23rd by Neil Nichols. Is Mr. Nichols here? I think he's a definite summertime person. I would like to meet him because he does a great job. So anybody want to explain this or talk to this? Oh, sorry, Becky, I didn't see you back there.
Yes, I'm here. Unfortunately, Neil couldn't make it today. He's out of the country, but he asked me to come and answer questions about the program. So I asked him to submit a statement, which was included in the packet that describes, the program and what he's asking for with regard to use of town property. So if you had any questions about what he wrote, I'm here to answer them.
Well, do you have a statement to read for the audience and for the at-home viewers? Or
Well, just
you
to
want me
reiterate what he has written, that he's been teaching art classes at Bakersfield since 2006. They're drawing in perspective classes, and he gave an example of a before and after picture that a child had drawn. He tries to keep the classes affordable and hasn't raised rates since he started doing it. And so in comparison to Castle Hill and other drawing classes, it's reasonably priced. And he's also been good about working with us using space that's not being utilized by the extended rec program, so he doesn't always need to be under the tent. If we're having a program there, he can draw, the kids can draw. He gave the location over by the skate park. They're he's very flexible with what he does. And so I guess he was asking in the last paragraph if you could consider if a fee to be per person instead of per day, so that he could keep the price, reasonable. So he's averaged between, last summer he had 10 students, but he's had as many as 15 or 20 students.
Okay, yeah.
So.
That would be fine with me. Does the board have any comment on that? And it's certainly his choice. Any comment?
It's my understanding he also attempts to make a certain number of seats available for kids whose parents can't pay.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the TV camera can see this, but this is the before and after picture. You guys can't see this. Can anyone see this? It's pretty amazing that this is one of the students drawing a house before class, drawing the house after class, and you see the perspective and the depth, and I want to go to these classes. So can I have a motion? Are there any other questions, comments?
I move to approve the use of Baker Field by Neil Nichols Jr. on August 5th through the 9th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., August 12th through the 16th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., and August 19th through the 23rd from 9 a.m. to 12 noon, subject to the conditions, if any, as listed on the application form for a fee of $110.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right. Bakersfield. July 4th parade, Chamber of Commerce. You want to get up, Laura, and say anything pertinent?
My name is Lara Henry. I'm the Executive Administrator of the Wellfleet Chamber of Commerce, and I don't have anything to add that's not on that permit.
Okay, it's the same route, right?
Same route.
So, and everybody knows about the same type of parade. I need to ask the Board of Selectmen, I asked Lara about throwing candy, and she said if we throw candy, she would have spotters at the side of our car to make sure it's safe. And I feel that it's not necessary to throw candy because somebody's going to have to be there, and they're going to have to get 2 volunteers to be there. I don't know if they're hesitant to be there or not, but how does the board feel about that? You don't care. You don't count. You're not in it.
Excuse me. I live here. I could be on the side.
You're a taxpayer.
I'm a taxpayer, and I'm sitting at the table. Here's the thing. One time when
She wants candy.
No, I don't, because one time I hit a kid in the face.
I thought that was Woody who did that.
No, we all do it, and I'm all for not throwing candy, and I'm sorry. The other thing is, I need to just slip this in here for the public. I love the people on the select board. I don't want to ride in the car because I want to watch the parade, but I have gotten my Bat Person superhero T-shirt, and I'm going to be participating as a superhero, Bat Person.
Batwoman.
We'll look for you.
No, person.
I think you should have gone as Chicken Lady.
It's a gender thing.
That is not a superhero.
It could
If you
be.
do decide
to
throw
Anyhow,
candy.
what do you guys think? How do you guys feel since we're the ones in the car?
Personally, I would rather throw dog biscuits.
That's good. We can do that.
I'm not so big on the candy, but
Yeah. Justina, how do you feel?
Well, I guess I'm in the minority because the little kids love it so much.
They really
and
do.
I mean,
Big
maybe
kids like
somebody
it, too.
once hit somebody in the face, but I wouldn't shut down the whole thing because one kid had a beanie hit him in the face. And I think it's pretty easy to throw it on the ground. I'm a terrible athlete, and last year I didn't find it difficult to throw it on the ground. And they squeal with excitement,
They
and
really
it's a tradition.
do. They love it. Okay, so
Madam Chair.
I'll go with Justina, and you can bring dog bones, and I'll bring candy.
Madam Chair, through
Yes.
you to Lara, we need spotters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
That's
You can find
perfect.
them?
And as long as you don't choose chocolate, any
I
type
know.
of candy would be perfect.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, good, thank you. Any other comments from the 4th of July parade, from the audience, from the board?
Yeah, from the board. I'm actually not joking right now. I love dog biscuits, but we have rats in Wellfleet. I'm not actually being funny, and I don't think it's a good idea to throw dog biscuits because we do have rats.
Actually, you take me too seriously, Helen.
Who knew? You love dogs.
You could probably throw a couple.
On the sly.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't let Helen see you.
Okay, may I have a motion?
I move to approve, well, I don't know what we're approving here.
We're approving the
Dog
use of
biscuits
town,
or
no,
candy?
we're not approving
Wait,
that at
I'll
all.
make the motion. I move to approve the use of town property for the annual 4th of July parade on Thursday, July 4th, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., subject to the conditions, if any, listed on the application.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, White Crest Beach, August 4th, for a wedding. Is Jessica Vitucci here?
No.
Okay. So do we want to move ahead? We usually like applicants to come before us, but this seems pretty simple. There's requesting to use probably the, I don't know if it's the top or the bottom of White Crest. Everybody, all the different committees and departments have signed off on it, and it's just going to be a small wedding of 10 people, no equipment or food or beverage. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the audience? Okay, may I have a motion?
I move to approve the use of White Crest Beach by Jessica Vitucci on Sunday, August 4th, 2019, from 5:45 p.m. to 7:15 p.m., subject to the conditions, if any, as listed on the application form, for a fee of $110.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Well, that was the quickest we've ever done that. So moving on to business, we have the first is a report from the Mayo Creek Restoration Committee. John Reel would come up. And I just want to mention to the audience that, is Mr. Marsh here?
No.
Okay, their lawyer. For the, I want to get the right.
Harborside Village.
Yeah, do you guys, you call yourself Harborside Village? Okay. We did not get the information from the lawyer until like 10 to 4 this afternoon. So although I read it, I don't know if the rest of the board read it, and it was all on my, no, we have it now too. We just didn't get it. So to look at something of this nature before, in like 2 hours really, is difficult. So we'll see where this goes. But if it doesn't go where you want it to go, we can discuss it another time too. So, Mayo Creek.
I have a very short introduction and then listen to your opinions and to any opinions from the audience. Mayo Creek, it's the other restoration project in town. And like the Herring River, it has the benefit of restoring salt marsh, which have a number of benefits to the harbor. The one I like to talk about is it's a nursery for small bait fish, which are important for the fin fishing hobby that so many people engage in the harbor. It has a role in climate change, a restored creek because of the potential of carbon sequestration. But as we've been working through the project, the key thing that's come out as an important current benefit is that there is an estimate from the Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee that some information they've received that the Mayo Creek restoration has the potential to remove 2,000 kilograms a year of nitrogen. And it does so in the part of the harbor which is most impacted, the Duck Creek area. So some history of, we've been at this project for 5 years, some history. For the first year or two, we tried to make use of the current culvert and duckbill, and found out we couldn't do that because if you, using that system, if you placed enough tide water in the marsh in order to get a significant amount of restoration, you couldn't get it all back out again on the ebb, and the result is that the average tide level in the creek would go up. And we had very strong opinion from some consultants that doing that would harm septics, which were abutting. And their septics start all the way from Wellfleet Marina right around Kendrick, which could be at risk. So that caused us to completely change our strategy. We went to a tidal gate. There's a picture in the report, which allows control of both the high tide and the low tide. And that creates a feasibility of 20 acres of restoration. There's a downside, and that's much more expensive. And we had an estimate of something like $2 to $4 million. That's a very rough estimate. We haven't pushed back on that. It's not an unreasonable sort of estimate. We've also spent a lot of time thinking of people's drinking water wells, particularly the Harborside Village, because that's an 85-person public water supply. The technicians, the scientists we've consulted with say that the flows of the fresh water down from Summit Hill and Holbrook would keep the salt away from the well screens. In addition, most of the wells...
away from the what screens?
Well screens.
Well screens, okay. I thought you said oil screens. Okay,
John,
thanks.
excuse me,
Wait.
could you talk a little more into the, thank
yes.
you very much.
Okay. Let's see where, the other thing I wanted to mention is that many of the well screens are below layers of clay, which adds an additional element of safety. If upon further review, further study is needed, there's a proposal in the report for a pathway to further work. Very quickly, we also spent some time thinking about sediment issues because that's very important in Wellfleet Harbor for shell fishermen. There is a fair bit of sediment in the creek bed as it exists today. That would have to be dredged. But on the upside, as new tidal water would flow into the marsh, it would carry some of the sediment which currently ends up in the north channel of the marina and leads to such a major sediment problem. Black mayonnaise wouldn't fix the problem, but it'd be a step in the right direction. In summary, we think the project is important to the town and is feasible. It is a narrow path. I once gave a talk about the project and called it a narrow path because we don't have a lot of flexibility in what we can do, but we believe we can protect private property for the broader benefit, and that's certainly our goal. We need to move forward with some additional issues. We need to look at permitting, what's required for permitting. I see that as an opportunity to do for a peer review of what we've written. We need to look at funding opportunities. We need to look at design opportunities. I think it's very important to cooperate at this point with the Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee. Look forward to being able to hire some external consultants. And finally, the Mayo Creek Restoration Committee, and this is a uniform opinion of the five of us, think that we have achieved the goals that the committee was set up for 5 years ago, and we should be retired, and there should be a new way forward. I should introduce the members of the committee: John Portnoy, Jake Puffer, Walter Barron, and Pat Winslow could not be here tonight. So I'd be interested to discuss with you any aspects of the report or think more precisely about what a path forward might be.
Janet, I'd like to add something if I may.
Okay, certainly. Use the mic, please.
Just like to read some short statements here. This is really a salvage job for a salt marsh that's been diked, drained, filled, and encroached on by development for the last 110 years. We think the town can get back 20 of the original 60 acres with no harm to private property. We've heard and we're likely to continue to hear concerns for private property. However, we diligently addressed those concerns with office and field research, consultation with regional hydrologists, and hydrodynamic modeling. We asked the Select Board to weigh the actual risks to private property against the substantial public benefits of our modest level of a salt marsh restoration. And finally, we should mention going forward that both the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, through their Cape Cod Water Resources Restoration Project, and the State Division of Ecological Restoration, and probably the NOAA Restoration Center, haven't talked to them lately, all these agencies have expressed interest in the past in helping the town develop the restoration plan for Mayo Creek with their technical help and potential funding.
Hold on. Questions or comments from the board? Kathleen.
First, I'd like to thank, this committee. I read this report. It's very detailed. There's an enormous amount of information in here, and it's very thoughtful and well done, and thank you for all this work. It left me with deep regret reading this report. I don't understand why the town did this 100 years ago. We may never have that answer. But we have an obligation here to correct this environmental damage and to do it in a way that will respect private property owners and everybody that will abut this restoration. But make no doubt about it, we have an environmental obligation to correct this. Thank you.
Anyone else from the board? Helen?
So, couple things. I was only able to skim what we got from Attorney Marsh, and it needs to be taken into account by the board. I am not someone who feels good about getting things at the last minute. And the other thing is, this is a long, complicated document, and it's important. It represents the point of view of the people who are concerned about this. And it wasn't posted with our packet, right?
Jan's already discussed that.
Yeah, I've already mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I want a chance to read it really carefully, not just skim it. And I'm much more aware of what the committee has done, and I thank them for it. But the new thing I want to say is, in other words, I don't want to make up my mind about anything having to do with this until I can really read what's in this letter. And I'm really angry that we only got it at the last minute, because I would have liked to do it all when everybody showed up. But anyway, let me get to my point. We are right now coming into the final stages of submitting a watershed permit to the DEP and being able to access funds to address exactly this kind of situation. And I am really glad that, this is a coordinated situation. In other words, this report is coming in a timely way, and this is the kind of thing for which funds from the state will be able to address with the concerns of the people who might be impacted about it. Should we have another cluster system? Because that, and forgive me, I always have a hard time remembering what you're called, but I know where it is, and I've been there. And I'm not going to call it the mobile home park. It's, that community. They have a cluster system. And I've been pushing cluster systems for a long time. But we might be able to get them an even better cluster system that could treat the water, even beyond what it is. But the point is, we need to take this report into account now and have it applied to be able to apply for this kind of money. I'm not talking English, but you see what I mean. So the report is timely. In my opinion, I don't want to consider it or make any decisions until I've read this rather long letter, just to be fair.
Anyone else from the audience, from the board? Yes, Justina?
I certainly echo what these gentlemen have said, and Kathleen, that we do have environmental goals, but I'm looking out over the audience at some concerned faces, and I certainly know what it's like to be affected by something and feel concerned about it. So I'm optimistic that we can work through the process, and I guess I want everybody to know I recognize that if you're here, I assume you're here because you're concerned, and your Board of Selectmen is here to hear you.
Hold on, I'm forming my thoughts, but you'll be heard. So I want to ask somebody who's, you know, from Harborside, because you're a little Herring River, right? You're a little Herring River restoration, and I've never gotten to ask the Herring River stakeholders what they don't like. So I totally get your water issues, your septic issues. I love that area. I mean, and how long has it been there? Yeah.
Since 1950.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're supposed to go to the microphone. So is that, without us looking at, you know, going over exactly what the lawyer sent, because we did get it late, is this your main concern tonight, is your septic and your water, or is there other concerns? Okay, yes, Maria, go to the mic, please. Thank you.
My name is Maria Hollis, and I represent Harborside Village. And with me tonight are Bonnie Whyto, Anne Marie Zarega, Jeff Tierney, Paula Sears, Gary Guthrow, and Tom Hollis, who are going to be affected by all of this, along with 85 other homes which are in Harborside Village. I apologize for not getting this form to you, this letter to you until today, but we didn't get the letter from the Salt Marsh Committee until the 17th, and we needed the time for the rebuttal. And I'm glad that you're going to consider this later on. We've had a sewage treatment plant installed at Harborside Village since 2004, one of the very few in the area. Our engineer, Dave Bennett, is also in the audience, and it costs us over $70,000 a year to have this piece of equipment maintained yearly. This list that you received from John Reel and the committee, I want to call this a promise list, not an actual work that has been done list, because the monitoring wells that are listed in this report have never been installed. There has never been anybody on our property with the license to take a test out of one of these monitoring wells present to take a test out of these wells. I've been to most of the Salt Marsh Restoration Committee meetings, and it's very repetitive, but we have asked several times about rising water levels, proper testing to eliminate contamination of our well and salt intrusion, smells due to the dying freshwater vegetation in the Phragmites, which they're telling me will not be removed. And we know from speaking with other people on the Cape, as well as Joel Fox, who's worked with the Falmouth people, that these Phragmites sometimes stay for 3 years before they disintegrate enough to, and the mayonnaise that Mr. Reel is talking about would occur under these Phragmites. We want also, in this document that you're about to read or will read, it'll also state that we will be interested in going in litigation against the town of Wellfleet if there is damage to our wells, salt infiltration, or diminish use within Harborside Village.
Could you, do you have that list written down that you just said?
In my hen scratch, I do, but it's
Yeah.
in that letter that you've got.
That list is, okay.
And more, it's more.
And more, there's a lot more, okay.
Yeah, I didn't even know I needed to get up
Okay.
here until 5 minutes ago.
So aside from all of this, okay, in a perfect world, I've always wanted to ask the Herring River people this question. And I know you guys love Wellfleet. You've got a really incredible spot there.
Right.
And it's really special. I get it. I get that the Mayo Creek is really special. Our harbor is really special.
Right.
And I think the older I get and the longer I've lived here, we all realize how wonderful Wellfleet is. It's really, aside from nature, it's got great people living here, even if they argue with me sometimes. But, you know, it's a beautiful small town, and more people want to come here. So, what would it take? And I agree. I would agree. I don't know if John and John would agree, but I mean, these seems like very reasonable questions to be taken care of, right? Monitoring, if there is damage or intrusion, to paying for that, seems very reasonable to me. But just from my own sense of it, is there any reason why you wouldn't want a marsh refurbished, replenished? Like, yeah.
Well, if someone could explain to me, to my satisfaction, why they would kill off the freshwater flora and fauna and kill off the freshwater habitat for the saltwater, I would like the answer to that question. I mean, to us, it doesn't seem like it's a benefit. It seems like it isn't worth the money that it's going to take to do all of this, and the possible intrusion. There are some people, I've gone to the Salt Marsh Committee meetings, and there are some of the abutters, these lines where they're going to flood run right through their bedroom. I mean, they're going to flood 20 acres of land. And we're only about 18 inches from water right now.
I know.
And if you fill 20 acres with salt water, that's going to raise the water table, and we're going to be underwater.
So do either of you guys have an answer to that? I'm sure you've answered it.
Do you want to take the last one first?
I've gone to your classes. So I would say we can start with brackish water, fresh water meeting salt water. And, you know, I just always picture in my mind, like, anything improving water is good for us in this day and age. I mean, water is life-giving. So yeah, can you in 10 words or less just address that? Like, okay, so what's the benefit of changing it from fresh water to salt water?
Okay, well, first of all, it's all in the report for anyone to read.
Okay.
But I can give you a summary.
You're good.
There's no oxygen in the water in the summertime. It's a highly degraded system. There are exotic plants, invasive plants in the floodplain. Yeah. Fish can't get up there. Even if they could, they'd die. Originally, it was a 60-acre thriving salt marsh with highly diverse flora and fauna. Right now, it's trending toward a monoculture of Phragmites. It's not a healthy system. As far as water supply goes, it's all in our final report. We've consulted with hydrologists at the Cape Cod Commission, the National Park Service, and Horsley Witten, and they all concur that there's very little likelihood of damaging wells, particularly the HVC Harborside Village well, simply because the freshwater table is higher than salt water would be in Mayo Creek. So just given gravity, salt water cannot penetrate the fresh water there,
right, it floats
because the
on
water is
top.
always flowing from the upland and from the marsh to the creek, and that's not going to change. The other thing regarding raising the water table throughout that whole area, we determined through the wells that we put in, the few wells that we put in and followed over a spring neat tile cycle, that the water table throughout Bakersfield and all the way up to Commercial and Holbrook is controlled not by Mayo Creek water levels, but by the harbor water levels. So the water table isn't going to change. It's dominated by the tides in Wellfleet Harbor.
Right. Okay, hold on.
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead, Maria.
They've put in monitoring wells, but they haven't monitored them.
Okay. All right. So,
your report is.
So, do you guys feel that this can all be addressed? And use the microphone, John, please. John, you got to use the mic.
I want to pick up on the comment that Maria made about monitoring. And ask you to think back in some history of the Herring River project. The Herring River project started out with the Herring River Technical Committee. Both John and I were on this. And that laid out a framework, a possibility to go forward. That was 14 years ago that it wrote a report. And those 14 years have been spent by the Herring River Committee doing exactly the sort of detailed work that Maria Hollis was talking about, putting in the monitoring, doing, I had a chance to glance quickly at the letter, and there was something in it that I happened to agree with because it raised the question about the selection of the tidal gates.
Yeah.
Well, I had in my own mind raised the same question. But that's part of the detailed planning and engineering planning, which is, all of the committee felt was beyond our scope. So what we laid out was a framework, a pathway, but all of this difficult, detailed, hard work needs to be done. We don't dispute that.
So you're here really tonight saying that your research and work has been done, and you want us to take the next step of hiring consultants, getting the permits, right? To clarify that for the audience.
I have some specific suggestions about how that might proceed.
So Maria, if everything in a perfect world, if everything worked the way it should,
yes,
would you love the Mayo Creek opened up if everything worked beautifully?
I wouldn't love it, but I would be very open to have the monitoring done by a professional, a licensed monitoring person, and to monitor the water levels as well as the salt and any other chemical that, I don't know of any other chemical that we're not totally against this as long as it doesn't affect us, you know, in a negative way.
I agree. I mean,
we're very cautious.
No one in the town would want to mess up your water. I mean, no one would want it.
Well, we're not the closest to the water. I mean, there are other people, other abutters that are much closer than we are, who are going to have some, you know, if you were a homeowner and you just had to have a tight tank because they want to do this, then it's very costly. We don't have to, but other people will in the town.
Yeah. Who had their hand up?
I did.
Justina?
Okay. I've heard some criticisms of the project. Let me make sure I understand your private property concerns, not like what these guys are doing wrong. But if you had a clean, you know, your water supply guaranteed, there always is the back option of town water, Helen mentioned cluster sewers. As long as all your private property concerns are met, are you guys okay?
We're okay as long as it doesn't affect and our land or our land use in any negative way.
So I just want to add that right now, the governor and the federal government, they're really, getting money is never assured. But projects like this, and as Helen just said, whatever it was you said about Cape Cod Commission
Well,
or the
we're-
Assembly funding,
yes.
that they're really, so this may be, and we're not going to rush anything, but this may be a good time for us to give them a go-ahead. You guys can, are you going to work with us on consultants and things like that, or are you out of here? Or do we,
Yes and no.
we know already?
I said I had a specific idea. It involves the town administrator. There's several projects which are coming to fruition, not only ours, the Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee.
Right, yeah.
The water commissioners have interests. So I thought I would offer my services to work with Dan on a small group with people from each of those groups, from the town conservation agent, and if you wanted to join us, and sort of lay out a roadmap going forward. And
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
where
Good.
to, and that would include how to fund it.
Yeah.
Janet?
So, yes, yes, you may get up and speak. Well, he's been wanting to speak.
He's our representative.
Okay. I know, but he's had his hand up.
Thank you. For
Started
the
from
record,
beginning.
I'm David Bennett. I am
Oh, okay, you're the, yeah.
Bennett Environmental Associates has long been the wastewater and public water supply operator here. And so I just wanted to make sure that you understood that even with the timing of this letter, we have been working with the Mayo Creek Restoration Committee to make technical comments and set forth expectations for a truly scientific investigation rather than a compilation of opinions from what we think are parties that have interest in moving the agenda forward. So specifically, the saltwater intrusion to the public water supply is a concern, and certainly a memorandum of understanding wherein a connection to town water without any fee is something that we would like to look at. We have critical infrastructure, the wastewater treatment plant. We designed and upgraded it 5 years ago. It meets 5 parts per million on a regular basis. I would say that there is no other wastewater treatment in the harbor area that's more efficient than ours. And because it is so shallow to water, it's critical that there's buoyancy of the collection system and separation to groundwater from the leaching system that has very significant ramifications with regards to environmental impact. Now, I don't want to go over this. I would hope that the public record would include Mr. Marsh's letter, that it should be read aloud like it was a letter that was received. Right. I would hope that it would be. I'm sorry. I'm not dictating should or could. And that you understand that it's accompanying a letter that was sent to the Mayo Creek Restoration Committee dated March 26th from my office, which is one of a number of different comments that we've made. We hosted a meeting at our office and provided technical information to the committee. So we've been working with them, and we have some serious technical concerns that need scientific investigation so as not to damage critical infrastructure for these 85 families, which, represent 170 people in the town, taxpayers. So that's really the standing that we would like to have at this meeting, is only that you're paying attention to the concerns that we have, that there are legitimate technical issues that still need to be investigated, and that you need to maintain objectivity in the context of the comprehensive wastewater plan, that you're going to get what you think you're going to get, and that there is a matrices to evaluate that. Because I think that the issue of nitrogen capacity of a freshwater versus saltwater is not that great. That in fact there is fundamental chemical changes that will occur in the soils and that will release, this is in your own comprehensive report that was done by environmental partners, that will release nitrogen. There's also a velocity issue at that gate that may cause turbidity in the harbor. So these are all real, very real issues that we look forward to the next step in the process are investigated rather than opined upon. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So
No, yes, all right, Helen had her hand up
Yeah,
first.
No, I was next.
No, actually, I had my
She
hand
said it
up before
before he did.
Justina. I'm sorry. And I want to hear what everybody has to say. So a couple of things. I would like to be sure that not only we read this letter, as I said before, but that the people concerned with this read the report themselves. And you can do it by going to the town's website and looking at the select board packet. That's really important, not just a lawyer that's representing you, but that well, I hope all of you have read it. The second thing is, when I described,
Did you post it?
Did
you post this yet?
This attorney's letter?
Yeah.
No, I've not posted it.
Yeah, it hasn't even been posted. That was my point. We are under this 208 plan that we are required to comply with. We have to address this area that includes where you live. And yes, it's another degraded wetland. Yes, it has some of the same issues as the different parts of the Herring River degraded wetland that needs restoration, but there are way more houses on it. And in phase 1 of the Herring River restoration, there are many fewer properties that may be impacted. And this is a whole different ballgame. And you're all living there. And I think it needs to be looked at. I'm agreeing with the rest of the board. But at the same time, I'm going to say it again, under this 208 plan set of requirements to fix the watershed pollution that's going into the harbor, we have to do something about it, right? Something has to change. And I did appreciate hearing a little more detail about the actual cluster system, the group system. And it's wonderful that Mr. Bennett came. I've wanted to meet you for years.
Kathleen?
I'm a fan of decentralized sewage as well. I think it's a very more expensive, and that, there's a tendency to go low-lying fruit. But that, the seriousness, just look at the density, and
If he's going to talk, we need.
Oh, yeah, you have to go to the microphone, sorry. We can.
may I just add to that comment?
No, you got to go to the microphone because this is on TV. Yes, you may, yeah.
Just to add to that, I served on my own town's 208, and I understand about the alternatives, and I know that there's been a lot of process about traditional sewering and traditional treatment and alternatives. From a professional standpoint, across the Cape, I think that we did a 208 20 years ago, and it didn't divert the problems we have now. So we are at a tipping point, and I think that we should be very cautious because these alternatives require extensive monitoring, and if they're not doing what they're saying, you're going to go back to the starting board. So there are aspects of habitat restoration that I think have merit. The issue is fundamentally different as stated. The Herring Rivers, the majority of it is in the national park. This is a very high density area of private properties. And when we started this, as Maria said, the high tide that was going to happen twice a day was actually on properties that are currently existing. So we've had some influence, and quite frankly, I think John's done a very good job in taking some of our thoughts into consideration and making some adjustments, but we want to continue to have standing to, I guess, vet the technical merits against the dollars so that the town makes the right decision. Thank you.
Hi, Janet.
Yes, Kathleen.
the biggest red flag here for me was that saltwater intrusion is not going to come to Harborside Village from tidal gates or restoring the creek. The elephant in the room here is climate change, and your water table is going to change with the rise of the water in Wellfleet Harbor. That's where your saltwater intrusion is going to come in. You are in a floodplain, and that's the big red flag here. Second red flag for me was, I consider Harborside Village affordable housing.
Thank you.
We can lose that due to rising sea level. That's the bigger elephant in the room. That's the bigger problem. When does that come? 10 years, 20 years? I can't predict it. But we've seen the water level change here in Wellfleet. We know it's going to come down at some point in time. We hear your concerns, but I think you're getting hit from another angle sooner than you think. Thank you.
John, Mr. Reel.
Just one comment in my introduction.
John, use the mic, yeah.
Sorry. In my introduction, I did talk about, I used the word peer review, which I think is an important part of the process. We're not arrogant. We're aware of where we could make mistakes. I mentioned one case where we set off in the wrong direction and changed. So I think that's an important part of the process. I just wanted to emphasize that.
I would also say to Kathleen's comment, Governor Baker is always talking about storm mitigation also because of climate change. I don't know what can be done down there, but that can be looked into also. Were you going to, did you say you wanted to say something?
Yeah, one more thing. I sat in on what was referred to earlier that a lot of people don't remember. Before the official beginning of formally appointed committees to deal with the Herring River project, and the first one was called the Conceptual Committee, yeah. This group that was referred to by John and John was very interesting, and when I read your report, I thought, oh, that's what this stage is. And what has been asked for, more science, more, something a little harder core, is exactly the next step that happened with the Herring River. Gordon Peabody was the chair of it, and it was official, and it was open meeting law. And I would suggest instead of some informal group that the Mayo Creek morphs into an organization that isn't meeting informally, that they meet formally, and that it goes to that next stage. It's a different size project, but it has a greater standing in terms of point and non-point pollution going into the watershed than the Herring River.
So unless somebody has something new to add, I think there's consensus that you guys have done an incredible job, a lot of work. We're ready for the next stage, and that next stage should assure you of what's going to happen. When we do hire, I'm assuming we're going to hire, but I could be voted down, someone that they really, you and your group will remain liaison and talk with them too. So I would use one of the phrases in the summary for our next, for our motion to recommend that the town proceeds to initiate detailed restoration planning with a goal of obtaining permitting approvals and eventual restoration implementation. How does that sound to you guys?
Second.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
I wrote it, so
I was going to say, does that sum up what we're doing and to take the next step? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Good. So, we'll keep you safe.
Matt,
yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, you're going to
thank you for coming tonight, those of you for Harborside Village. And I think I heard that you want your concerns to be heard and included in the process. I really enjoyed Mr. Bennett's presentation. I look forward to reading the documentation.
Yeah.
And I do remember from my days on the Water Commission, there are some solutions. So I'm not Santa Claus, but, you know, there's things the town can do.
Yeah, can I say one more thing?
Yes, I'm seeing if Martha's here, but she's left. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to echo what Kathleen said, though. Sooner or later, that was all marshland. Bakersfield was filled in with dredging spoils. And I fear for your community because you're right there at water level. And I hope you all think of that, and I wish you didn't have to, but this is our world now. So.
Well, on that note. Nice retaining wall would be. Well, you never know if it would work. I don't even know. Yeah, you know, I mean, seriously, the governor and the federal government's talking about saving our coastlines. I mean, I just was at a talk with Senator Markey, and that's what he talked about, saving our coastlines. And this, I was seeing if Martha's here, this conference that at the end of July is all about water. It's all about saving our water, saving our coastline, innovative alternatives, septics. You must go to that, Mr. Bennett. Did you ever go to the One Cape? Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah. So we'll have lunch. Yeah.
I hope we'll be presenting on wastewater.
Yeah. So it's a huge concern. It's a huge concern. So we'll work with all of you guys. It's important.
And our comments are in the context of what you just stated.
Good.
Right? But I want you to know that.
Yeah. No, I never. It was really good. I'm really glad you're not making us read it in public.
I don't have that power, but
It's good.
I would like, as the first aspect of the next committee, that this
Yeah.
document be under consideration, because there are
Yes.
issues here which will guide additional work.
We'll get, yeah.
Very specific issues.
Need to be at the microphone
Oh,
if you're
yes.
going to continue to talk.
Or we hear you. No, I agree. It's very well done, very well done. So,
Madam Chair, you
yes.
understand it is now part of the public record and will be included with the minutes for this. We got it, and it's absolutely part of what happened this evening. It's just really not good to get it like 10 minutes before I come to the meeting.
Well, 2 hours. But
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think we owe a debt of thanks and gratitude. The Mayo Creek Restoration
Yes,
Committee,
yeah.
their
Yeah,
terms
it's
are
really hard.
expiring. And so
Where'd
they have
John
all
go?
served for 5 years and are now escaping back into the real world, so.
And being a volunteer, so to address some of your concerns, volunteers have limited time, and that's why we have to take that next step. But thank you, it's really hard, even though I know John Portnoy likes to do it.
Oh, no, he doesn't. Madam Chair, through you, I'm a little confused. Have you all formally resigned?
Yeah.
You're not
I think
being
John Real
reappointed?
just did
Their
it.
term expires
Your term expires when?
June 30th.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Well,
Yeah.
thanks.
Does the Board of Selectmen have power to deny your dismissal?
No, we do not.
Disassembly?
Come on.
Okay, I'm kidding.
Oh, God.
All right. Any other questions, concerns? So, good. Thank you. Thank you for expressing yourself well and nicely. Good. And thank you, guys. Okay, moving on to, I want to get my thing, make sure we're on to bikes. Okay, go ahead, yep. I'll wait, so discussion. So, all right. So this was listed as discussion of June 13th DCR presentation and letter in response to Article 14. Wait for them to go.
Madam Chair, may we ask the people not to talk so we can hear what we're doing? Thank you.
We may. Wait, when's,
So now
Danny
we've
gonna
lost
be on this?
Kathleen.
She said to go start without her. So, this is not how I would have written the agenda for this. So I want to make it clear to the Bike and Walkways Committee, I don't want to get into a whole discussion again about this and that and what's happening, okay? And getting the whole, everybody, yeah, because we've had 4 meetings, I believe, on this. So I have what I want to do, if I can find it, and I'm stalling while I'm waiting for Kathleen.
What are we doing now?
We're discussing and talking about the letter. I thought we were just going to discuss the letter, but you do that? Good. So I want. I know that the past few meetings have been the DCR and the DOT, and I know that you guys. They've told me that they are separate. They're told that there's 2 distinct plans. I know you guys don't agree with that, so I know all the talk about it. What I want to do is I want to read to you the charge of the Bike and Walkways Committee. Have you guys ever read it? Okay. So the charge, in accordance with the Wellfleet Town Charter, the Board of Selectmen hereby establishes the Bike and Walkways Committee as an ad hoc committee with the following charge. The Bike and Walkways Committee is hereby established to consider ways to provide safe areas for biking and walking. The Board of Selectmen believes that these activities should be available seasonally and year-round, as they are important means of local transportation, popular activities in the town, and promote good health. The Bike and Walkways Committee is charged with the following tasks: to work with the Cape Cod National Seashore, the towns of Provincetown and Truro, and the Cape Cod Commission to establish the continuation of the bike trail northward into Provincetown. Number 2, to prepare a plan for future bike and walking routes throughout the town of Wellfleet. The Wellfleet Bike and Walkway Committee shall be composed of 5 members. All members will be appointed by the Board of Selectmen, now known as the Selectboard. To establish an overlapping appointment period, the following appointments will be made initially: 2 for 3 years, 2 for 2 years, 1 for 1 year. After the expiration of the initial terms, all terms will be for 3 years. So from what I get from you guys, and I've talked to some of you, I feel that you're not helping with a plan to prepare for future bike and walkways. You're saying what you don't want, okay? Do you know what I mean? All right, so that's not your charge. And as any good committee should know, it's not about saying no, it's about working together, compromising, finding the solution, okay? So you're nodding your head, nobody else is nodding your head, all right? Okay, so that's what we need from you, is we need some solutions, some alternate plans. You have, and I know it's summertime, and no.
No, I'm just telling them, let me do it. After you,
No.
when you're ready.
Stop interrupting. So the thing is that you should be talking with the seashore. You know, I know that you have some other ideas. Talk to the seashore, okay? You have that power. You can say, we're the Wellfleet Bike and Walkways Committee. We would like a meeting with you. All right, so that's first, okay? And it's funny because this is old. So I want to say, I'm saying this now because in all the other meetings, there's been so much, I don't know, I don't even know what the word is. I was on the Bike and Walkways Committee at least 8 to 10 years ago. And we felt we had finished our job when the state said, yes, we want to work on you for a bike trail. We thought we were so happy when the bike trail a year ago, and not in the fall or whatever, was going to come through. That was our goal. And then the new committee, which I also believe got together because you wanted to prevent this. Well, okay, that's my impression, because you've blocked it.
excuse me.
Yeah, you have to go, shh, Helen, easy, it's okay. Anyhow, it doesn't matter, but so there's got to be a better way to do this, all right? That's what I'm saying, and that's the charge, and that's what I want to have you guys do tonight. It's not easy, but in the meantime, you have to make clear statements for us, and I disagree. I think the bike trail should continue. Rebecca should have recused herself, even in town meeting. Helen disagrees with me, I can see her shaking her head. Even at town meeting, when you wanted to have the Article 44, say stop at Old Kings Highway. Old County, sorry. It's Old, yeah. You should have recused yourself because even though you're not in a butter on Old County Road, you were an abutter to where it would go. Okay? That's my opinion. No, you can't. She didn't speak at town meeting. She voted to. Okay. Excuse me, Steve. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. I am saying that will you guys just kind of talk down everybody and have your ideas. I'm just expressing what is true, and she did as your board, right? You have 5 people on your board. The board recommended that article 5-0. She should have recused herself from recommending the article. So
Madam
whether she
Chair.
spoke to it or not, no, I'm not done yet. So there's just got to be a better way to plan this and just not stop it, not totally stop it, because that to me is where it is now, it's just completely stopped. And I want to know what progress you will be making. But tonight is also really about the letter and asking us to sign it. So I'm going to move on to that. And yes, all right, Mr.
Madam
Oliver,
Chair, excuse me.
You may get up.
I need to address this, if you don't mind.
All right.
Respectfully, I have been to the Bike and Walkways Committee. I was at the DCR meeting in the, at the school. I am very, very aware of their charge. And I have to say, in my opinion, which is not prejudice, they have been doing exactly what their charge is. You have accused them of not looking at alternative, routes.
No, I haven't accused them of that.
Yes,
I'm saying
you did.
they need to work, they need to actually have meetings and work with that.
They have done that. And I
Have
don't
your
fault
meetings?
you for being, I don't fault you, Madam Chair, for not being aware of that, because we can't all keep track of everything. But I do fault you of accusing them of something that is not true. They have been doing that, and at the DCR meeting, it was remarkably constructive. And in fact, they are pro-bike trail, and they are absolutely addressing one very serious safety issue. And I really think they're a highly functional, unprejudiced committee. I also have to remind you that although I hear your sense that one of their members should have recused, this board voted that her conflict, her appearance of conflict, was not so great as to prejudice her voting and acting on it, and I feel, having witnessed her voting and acting, that that was correct, that she is absolutely scrupulous in her performance of her duty as a committee member. And I'm sorry to be so upset, but again, I don't fault you for not having gone to these various meetings.
Okay,
But,
so I'm
but
gonna, okay,
I
thanks.
don't
Thanks
think
for
you've
that.
got it right. Thank you.
The only meeting I haven't been to was the one that was advertised as the abutters, and the other one where I was out of town, okay?
The DCR meeting.
The last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was out of town. Forgive me, I haven't had a vacation for 4 years, and I
Yeah.
decided to go away. So I did look for it online, and it hasn't been posted yet. Maybe it's been posted now, but I looked for it last week when I got back. And I also have to say that there are 3, I think you've had 6 meetings, 5 meetings, and only 3 of the minutes are posted on the website. So these are things that would help with all communication. These would help me know, because none of them said, met today with the seashore, met today to look at alternative plans. I know you're looking at the power lines. I know you know, Old County Road to Cahoon, that's fine. That's also been looked at before. And there's also been reasons why the power lines are not feasible. And maybe, you know, maybe the seashore with the new superintendent is more amenable to it. Have you met with the seashore?
Yeah, well, after that last DCR meeting, we did talk to him a bit.
Good.
And you know, in general, I get you, Janet, and I'm really trying to just
No, and I get you guys too. Yeah.
For the fact that we mainly want to stop things right out here, really, just for now. And that still brings the bike trail a good ways down. And we absolutely, that is our biggest part of our charge right now, is exploring possible routes. We've been in, had meetings with Truro and Provincetown. We are really trying to get the whole thing together. We're not trying to be totally contentious and totally negative.
No, you're
Our
not.
main concern is we don't, that two-lane DOT proposal on the highway is ridiculous.
Right.
And that's why we want to put the brakes on not getting it to the parking lot. We're not trying to be totally negative. And, you know, the DCR guys, I talked to them after me and said, yeah, I understand you guys are trying to do a good thing, and the bike trail will be a good thing, but not if it goes out to the highway and onto that DOT plan. So all we're really saying is give us the time to do exactly what you say you thought we weren't doing, is to come up with a better proposal for this. We could have, and you know, yeah, the power lines has been investigated, so we say no. I still say that's a really good potential. And we just want to have the time to do that, to meet. You know, it's middle of summer right now. It's kind of tough to meet, but we met 3 or 4 times at least. And I think all our minutes were posted. I would be surprised.
You've only met 3 times?
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
but we've only kind of just got together at this new committee.
Yeah.
I was the solo
since
committee
March or
for about
April,
3
right?
years.
Yeah,
And now we've got
yeah.
these guys who are really putting a lot of energy into trying to find a really good proposal. And I'm sorry, that Route 6 two-way catastrophe is not a good proposal. So that we're being negative on, just to try to put the brakes on it to that point and give us time to get something. We're not trying to say no bike trail at all. We love the idea of bringing the bike trail down.
Do. So where did it end with the DCR and the DOT as that last meeting?
Well, the DOT wasn't there, so there was no, that was the bad part of that last meeting. So, and that's what DCR just fell back on constantly was, well, that's DOT when it gets to the highway. And we're just trying to say, please, let's not bring it out to the highway. It is going to be crazy catastrophe if we bring it out to the highway with their current proposal. So we're just starting to say, yeah, they're going to start construction on that anyway. It's going to take them a while. Yeah. Can we not just at least slow it down, maybe not get that parking lot going, because potentially we would like to see it end out here on Old County Road and then pursue a safer, more beautiful path heading up towards Truro. That's our big...
Okay. Kathleen?
I've been to the very first DCR presentation. In my mind, that presentation sticks with me because I thought, this is a really non-invasive plan. This is a good way for them to claim the last 2 miles of their railroad bed and not be invasive. It's a way to keep it ADA, and I thought they were very amenable to, you know, screening and privacy and all of it. The fact that now they're pursuing property to create a larger parking lot, in my mind, just seems like more of a benefit to this plan, with yet even more landscaping and screening and a buffer area, you know, far before the highway. What does the town benefit from this plan if it goes to the highway? Public bathrooms, a picnic table, a parking area, maybe a rest sign that says, in honor of Miles Tibbetts? I'm looking at this project as the greater good, not in a negative way. I've been deeply, deeply offended by this committee's verbiage and adjectives, dumping people onto the highway. Dumping people onto the highway. Close your eyes. Picture that. The select board, the state, people behind this project, dumping people on the highway. Do we do that now up at South Wellfleet?
No, I wouldn't say so. And
Are these, I'm not finished, Justina.
I'm sorry, Kathleen.
It's our job to find the good in all that comes before us. And while I know this is not a perfect plan, I do not see the DCR giving up these last 2 miles of track.
And we
So
don't
how do we work with them, Ned? How do we make this work for the town of Wellfleet? How do we make it safer? What can we tell them?
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at, is that the final 1.75 miles that they want to build is excellent, and everything you stated, and I totally agree, and that's what we want to have. It's this last 500 feet going out to the highway.
They're not going to give it up.
Well,
it's probably, you know,
this
is the last nail in this project.
But in the meanwhile...
And wait a minute, I just want to also say, well, the first thing that I thought of when I saw that first presentation wasn't a terminus. I saw it as a beginning for residents of Provincetown, Truro, and Wellfleet to come to an area and start that 28-mile trip to Dennis. I didn't see a terminus or dumping out on the highway. I saw it as a place for us to start. As it is now, I throw the bike in my back of my truck, go to South Wellfleet, park, and then take the trail, because I won't ride the highway. I haven't been on the highway on my bike since 1972.
And there's our point, right there. We could have said terminus right up here by campground and avoid having it come. And all we're asking, as I've said, is to slow it down so that we do have a chance to find if there isn't a better possibility. And I think there can be a 10 times better possibility. I've never said dumped the people out, but it's maybe been used. But it's because there's such concern about getting young families on bikes with 2 or 3 kids, and then, oh, it's the end of it. Let's just go out onto this 2-lane catastrophe out on Route 6. And it will be really dangerous out there, including that parking lot.
Is it not dangerous now?
It is, but not as many families.
Are there any safety constructs out there now? You know, the other thing you're not, let me finish. The other thing you're not realizing, the state, the Department of Transportation is under a federal mandate. They have no say in the matter to create a 2-lane bike lane. It's a federal mandate. Yes, it is.
No, it's
Okay, you can't talk from the audience. You have to raise your hand, even though it's more convenient.
Well, again, I just want to say our main point is to give it a little time. They still have a while before they're going to be able to get that all built. If we can't come up with something better, and it does have to come out to there, we could try to work with DOT. We want to do all these things, but you know, the town has expressed that they don't want. A lot of people are very concerned about the dangers of this new, especially the DOT out on the highway plan, and that's all we're asking for. Is let's slow it down, sign this letter, give us a chance to get a better route, and I think we can. I think it can be so much better. To just say that, okay, DOT's come up with
Okay,
this.
so stay up there if you want. So I really think it's important that you separate DCR bike trail from DOT bike lanes.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard for you to do that. We've had this conversation a number of times before, and I don't know what happened at that Thursday meeting. But I'm certainly willing to have Mr. Hort, myself, all of us meet with DCR and really on a smaller and yet videotaped meeting go over these points, because DCR told me that they're 2 separate projects.
Yeah, that's what they always say.
Yeah, okay, but no, so that's what he said to me. I have no reason to think that he lied, okay? So this is what I'm talking about, that there's this back and forth that's a little unpleasant, okay? So this is what I was told. So so if DCR goes to Route 6, they own the property, they have the right? None of you want me to come in and tell you what to do with your property, right? They have the right, they own it. Would you be satisfied with a smaller parking lot?
Not really. It's
You don't want
still,
any parking lot?
well, not there, if
Yeah.
possible. And if okay, if it has
But
to
it can't
that
be any
way,
other place because the power lines here are
no,
not
at
owned.
the
They're also,
campground. Paynes, the new
they've
Wellfleet
already
campground.
explained why they can't have it at the campground. Do you know
Have
that?
they?
Yeah, they have. It was at one of the second meeting or something. So are there any conditions that would satisfy you with them coming towards Route 6 but
if
not
they could-
onto it?
Yeah, and if they could maybe at least delay themselves and also just sit back and look at it and say, okay, let's not rush to this parking lot.
So they're not rushing because it's been like
I know.
12 years,
And
you
it's
know?
going to be 2 more years till it gets there, but
Yeah.
that's all we're asking for in the meantime
But
is to
what
find...
would make you happy with the plan? Have you guys thought about it? What would make you happy? And besides stopping at Old County Road, what would make you happy?
That's the main point, because from there is where we are trying to
Okay.
investigate to find, and we are on track to finding some really good alternatives. If nothing else, if we could just have an alternative, and if they just decide in the end, okay, we're going to have this parking lot, but maybe with the town behind it, say, make it really fenced off and like you're not supposed to go out on the highway here unless you're an experienced rider, and you have this opportunity for this alternative route, which we are hoping to get. So we're asking for time. That's really what it comes down to.
And how much time do you think that takes?
Hopefully within a year, I think we can have a plan together. And is that much to ask for? Rather than rush into what I think is a real, and a lot of people in town have expressed it's a really dangerous idea.
Yeah. So I also want to ask, since Rebecca has a family, do they ever like ride right out onto Route 6? You live on Route 6. Do they ever ride right out there?
Speak in the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have to ask you a question, so you have to go to the mic.
I'd clarify that LeCounts, the Cape Cod Commission said it's 1,000 cyclists per day in the summer.
And is that in Wellfleet or on the whole bike
at
trail?
LeCounts. The count at LeCounts at the bike path.
Is that actual bicyclists and walkers, or is that cars? Because you can't judge by the cars.
25,000 cars per day go on Route 6. On the bike path, it's 1,000 cyclists a day at LeCounts. Those people will continue, and we're going to have 1,000 cyclists a day coming to the highway. Do I see cyclists coming out there and people walking, crossing the street all the time? Yes. Can they put a crosswalk there, which would alleviate some concerns? No.
Probably not there. Yeah.
No, they can't.
Yeah. So the question I asked though was, does your family like go out onto Route 6 and bike?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay. And why is that?
Because it's not safe, and we live here and we know that.
Because you
we
look,
were
you
here
see, and it's
when-
not safe, right?
Well,
No, I just
because
want-
we live here and we know it, but I
Yeah.
see people all the time. And
Yeah.
either they are visiting or they don't know because they're visiting or they don't know.
Yeah.
But-
So if there was some kind of signage or some kind of cul-de-sac before you get there, that wouldn't satisfy you?
Well, I also see people not obeying the speed limit sign all the time, so I don't think signs work. And I also know 87% of bicycle and pedestrian fatalities happen when a speed limit's over 30, and people are constantly going over the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit.
Yeah.
So there's some very real concerns. The statistics show that each year we're getting less vehicle deaths, but more bicycle deaths each year because they're biking on roadways that aren't meant for it.
Yeah.
Madam
So,
Chair, I need to
my-
say more, please.
All right, please be
Justina.
concise.
You weren't. I have more to say about this. So let's remember what the series of steps were. For a long time, everybody thought, and I thought too, having the bike trail go all the way to Provincetown was great, and it's been worked on for a very long time. And then push came to shove here, a straw broke the camel's back, and the select board realized that that intersection in that danger zone was something that really needed to be addressed.
And you're,
that was
and you're referring to Main Street, Route 6 and Commercial
Yes.
Street.
And the select board went to the DOT and said, hey, we need help. And we were very specific about needing help, and the reasons were very good. The next thing that happened was the DOT came to us and said, we're going to give you a roundabout there. And we had an excellent hearing, and they understood why that wasn't a good idea. The next thing that happened, and here is my issue with this whole thing, is not the fact that the DCR might want to extend for another 2 miles, a 1.75 miles, something, to a property that they still haven't bought. They have a purchase and sale agreement. It isn't that they might make a parking lot there. It's that at the same time, the DOT decided to create on the east side of Route 6, in the most dangerous stretch of Route 6 in Wellfleet, a 2-way bike trail that they are labeling as a sidewalk, but it's wide enough for bikes to go in 2 directions. And that is the problem here. And then they said,
okay,
DCR said, we are not doing this with the DOT, except they are. They have met on it repeatedly, and wait, they say they're not doing it with them, and yet they work on projects all over the state with the DOT. And for example, there they were in the gym that day, after this town had asked, this board had asked repeatedly to have a meeting with both agencies, and they said, oh yes, and we worked with the DOT on this part and Dennis on the bike trail, and it's obvious that they do work with them, and they should. They have separate budgets. And what the fuss is about is that it will invite people onto Route 6 in a very dangerous place. And we're just asking them to take another look. And if you'd been at that meeting, and I'm not faulting you guys for not being at it, you saw the tape.
So, Helen,
we
we're going over the same things.
No, we're not. But
yes,
you didn't.
are.
You stated that they were separate, and they are not. And I had walked into the meeting you and Dan Hort had with Leo Roy, the commissioner, and what's his first name, Levy, who's sort of in charge of Nickerson. And it was, you know, you were sitting upstairs. I walked by. I sat in on it. And at the end of that meeting, Leo Roy, the commissioner of the DCR, said to me very clearly that he wasn't aware of what the DOT was proposing. Later, at the Butters meeting, it was acknowledged by the agencies that they were aware of it. So, again, I don't fault the head of the DCR for not knowing every little thing, but they are aware of it, and at the Butters meeting, they were very clearly aware of it, and there were 7 people there from 2 agencies, and why were we not invited? You would have learned things that might color, one way or another, your opinion about this.
All right. So, Mr. Hort, what did you want to say?
What I wanted to say is these are 2 separate projects.
They really are.
No matter what you say, these are 2 separate projects. The town of Wellfleet is paying for and designing
Stantec.
through Stantec the Route 6 and Main Street intersection. The design that we present goes to DOT, and we say, are you okay with this? The DOT is not designing this project. They just give us the authority to say, yes, this is acceptable with DOT standards. They are not designing the project. The town of Wellfleet is designing the Route 6 and Main Street intersection.
We are.
So what, so we'll just, I mean, again, we're going back and forth that we have been for a long time. Personally, I don't like the letter, and I don't like the halt construction, because I think there can be cooperation there, and I think we have to clarify with the DCR exactly what's going on. I don't want to halt construction. This is finally getting a go-ahead, and there's finally money. So nothing's going to happen that quickly. And this tonight is really about signing the letter. But no, go ahead. I'm just looking now. Go ahead, state your name and say what you want to say.
Hi, I'm Peter Cook, just an interested citizen. So I've heard the discussion. I'm not a member of the committee, the Bike and Pathways Committee. However, I have heard repeated reference to these as being separate projects, and I suppose that's true in some technical or financial sense, but I think it's important, and I found this online. It took me about 3 minutes. It's a letter from DCR to MEPA, the Massachusetts Environmental
Protection Agency, yeah.
Correct. And in that letter, there's an interesting sentence. This letter is dated December 13th, 2018, and it discusses the need for approval for their project, the DCR project. And it says, the trail extension to Route 6 is necessary to connect with the upcoming Mass DOT Route 6 Main Street intersection improvement project. And it gives the DOT project number, 607-397, which will include a multi-use shared path along Route 6. See below, and then it includes a diagram. And then it includes another reference later in the letter to the same.
Did you read this at the last meeting or a couple meetings ago? Because I have somebody else read this too from their phone. Somebody else read that.
I just saw it, so it's interesting to have in writing from December references by DCR that one project will support the other project. So I think it's important to note that although the projects may technically be separate, they are coordinated. And one depends upon the other. So.
I see that point. So what I would like to propose is that the Board of Selectmen, with the Bikeways Committee and Mr. Hort, we contact the DCR and really work this out. But to halt anything is just to halt things, and we really want to move forward with something.
Janet.
So Kathleen and Justine had to say something.
Yeah, I want to agree with Janet, and I think that the Board of Selectmen, of course, heard Article 44 of requesting a letter from the Board of Selectmen. I'm uncomfortable with the language of this letter. It's got capital letters in it, which online I know is seen as shouting at people, and I think the Board of Selectmen should write their own letter with politer language. And I also don't see the emergency to write the letter, and I support the goals of trying to tone down some of the passions here so that we can try to get working on solutions. And as Kathleen said, there's a lot of benefits. And I think
there's a lot of what?
Benefits from this for the larger good. So let's all start rowing in the positive direction.
What you should do is work on getting cars off the road. Everybody should be biking. That would really, oh yeah, I know, Steve. Okay. What? No, you just start biking everywhere, or horses, I mean, it's a whole environmental thing too. If this worked out well, think of how many people might bike or walk rather than take their cars. But that's far in the future. Okay, so is there any kind of a motion or postponement or not wanting to accept the letter?
You have an option of either making the motion as it's written or taking no action at all on this if you don't want to send the letter.
Okay. Well, I suggest that we don't take any action.
Madam Chair?
I think we've discussed this.
Yeah, okay.
So
I'm addressing what you just proposed.
Okay.
Yeah. So I apologize for getting annoyed.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. Let's have solutions rather than being annoyed. Okay?
There were a lot of solutions
Don't
given.
start again. Okay, so what were
So
you
don't
gonna say
accuse
now?
them of not having solutions when they have them and they've been very articulate about them. Okay?
All right,
So
sorry.
I have to say I'm glad that this got brought up.
So,
Even if
Helen,
we don't write a letter right now, what people in the room should know, including the select board, is that there is a petition circulating from the general populace, who is pretty well informed about this, and it's going to go to the governor. And this is not in our purview, but I'm making first mention of it here. So we'll see what happens, and I hope it all goes well, and I hope there's some way to get from the bridge to Provincetown at some point that's safe. That's what I hope for.
Good. So is there a consensus on whether we want to sign the letter and send it for yes?
I move
no?
to take no action, Madam Chair.
I'll take no action. How do you? Just
Not against a letter. I'd just rather draft a more polite one and see how things go for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah, and so we'll contact the DCR and see what they have to say.
And please, the DOT. I think we should have the meeting.
That's another story. Okay.
No, it's not.
Well,
the DOT is not designing Route 6 and Main Street. Stantec is. If you would like a meeting with Stantec, I can ask them to come in and meet. But the DOT is not designing the Route 6 and Main Street intersection.
Mr. Hort, respectfully.
No more point of order, really. This just
Okay.
goes back and forth, and
So-
you just no. We're moving on. Case closed. Thank you, and we will work together, all right? It's this bitterness and this fear doesn't solve any problems. I know. I mean, I've talked to Ned, so I get it. Okay, thank you for your effort, and just keep putting more effort into it. Committees aren't easy, but if you have trouble getting a meeting with the Seashore, with DCR, go through us. That's or anybody else. I don't know who else would be involved. Okay, thank you. So where are we? Oh, new. Let me just make sure. Yep, we're now with the new Select Board policy on local access television. Any comments? Oh, Mr. Silverman, would you like to come forward and talk on this? Yes, you may.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Could you give a brief explanation for the TV audience and the local audience?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I will keep to my own rule, and I won't be more than 3 minutes. This is discussing the selectmen are proposing a policy and usage guideline for Wellfleet Channel 8 regarding taping public meetings. And in reading this, the reason I'm before the board is under paragraph 2, content. The first sentence says, all public meetings of all town policymaking and regulatory boards and commissions, including annual and special town meetings, will be recorded for television broadcast and/or digital streaming, and so forth. And the reason I'm before you is that I would ask that you remove the phrase including annual and special town meetings. And the reason for that is under Mass General Law, Chapter 39, town meetings are governed by sections 9 and 10 and section 15. And just a couple of brief things by background. Because town meeting is a legislative body, it's not subject to the open meeting law. It's governed by separate sections of state statute, which are the paragraphs 9 and 10. Paragraphs 9 and 10 are very specific about what happens at town meeting, how town meetings are called. And the regulation of town meeting itself, what goes on at town meeting, during town meeting, is under the authority of the moderator as a separately elected presiding officer for town meeting. So just as a separation of powers thing, I think it's inappropriate for the board to have a policy that discusses what goes on at town meeting. Now, I like the fact that we're taping town meeting. I think it's for the sake of openness, for the sake of people understanding what goes on. I plan to continue allowing town meeting to be taped, but some future moderator may have a different opinion. There may be a situation where there's a very sensitive issue and a moderator or presiding officer feels that it would be inappropriate to film town meeting and so forth. That's a decision that has to be left to the moderator. So for that reason, I just think it's inappropriate. The town meeting is not really Once you've called the warrant, once you've closed the warrant and you've posted the meeting, town meeting is no longer your responsibility, it's then the responsibility of the moderator. So for that reason, it's not any wish not to see them taped. So it's a separation of powers thing. That's all I have to say.
So is there a way you would like to include something in this? This is, I just want to see something here. It is on the Select Board's policies. Okay, so would you like something, would you like to include that in your moderator's purview? Or
Again, I don't think it's really necessary.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessary for the board to address what goes on at town meeting. That's
Okay.
not your purview. So.
All right. Kathleen?
Thank you, Danny, for pointing this out. I wasn't aware that the Select Board had this policy, and I'm in total agreement with you that, the purview for that taping with regard to town meetings should stay with the moderator and not be split. So I look at this as a housekeeping issue, and I thank you for
Well,
pointing that out.
the policy doesn't exist. It's a new policy that you're
Yeah.
proposing, and you will be going, presumably under the
Yeah.
policy guidelines, will be going for comment. So I'm just maybe jumping the gun a little. Having read this, I wanted to bring it to you, and maybe before you put it out for comment, that sentence, or that
Yeah.
phrase doesn't belong in there.
Yeah, so you just want us to delete it, which I agree with. It makes total sense.
That's all I've got. I think that was under 3 minutes.
Any comments, other comments besides Kathleen
Or
from
any
the board?
questions?
No, it's
About
good.
this one?
Yeah, and I think it goes in the direction of something I hope will eventually
Thank you.
happen with the state, which is they give us the alternative.
thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Danny, of having our minutes done by video, because it's so complete, given that we can, but we're not
What do you
there
mean
yet.
your minutes done by video?
So now, these boards and committees, and others also, if we can afford it, will be videoed. But I'm hoping that eventually the state, instead of requiring written minutes, which are always partial, that they will give towns the alternative of using, given that they're archived. I'm just talking
Oh,
about,
all right,
yeah,
I
do
know
you
what
see
you
what
mean.
I'm
I
saying?
just wanted to
Sounds like an
clarify
act
it.
of Congress there, Helen.
No, it isn't. It's just changing the open
Well,
meeting law.
it'll change it's changing with the times. Go ahead, you done?
No, in fact, I got Rep. Peake and Senator O'Leary to instigate a change in the open meeting law back in the early 2000s, which now mandates that we have to put what's on an agenda if the chair knows it. So this is easy, and I'm not saying we should suggest it, but I'm hoping that the state will go to it, because it's a really good
Okay.
way to make a record.
True. Anyone else have comments from the board on the policy? I have a couple. I get that, who wrote this anyhow,
The
Mia?
Cable Advisory Committee did.
Okay. Okay, so they're asking that all public meetings of all town policymaking and regulatory boards and commissions will be recorded. I still think it's one part of our policy that each board, each committee can choose whether they want to be recorded or not. And I know that with like the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board and possibly the ZBA, there can often be personal information. And I know that, I think they've all elected, I don't know about the ZBA, to opt out of being recorded.
So the only thing that is happening with this agenda item is that you are referring it to department heads and other
Okay.
appropriate members of town government for review and comment. So you're not being asked to adopt this policy
Oh,
here.
okay, all right.
And if you don't want to require everyone to be taped, then you would not adopt this policy.
And it should also, besides going to, let me just read this, department heads and other appropriate members, our appropriate members committees.
It will go to all committee
All
chairs.
committees will see this,
Yeah.
okay. The other thing I wanted to say, because, I don't know, I think it's going to go through you to them, is in paragraph B, it says recordings of town school events and recordings of recreation events. And I believe that there's even some law with requirements to videotaping children. And so that should just be brought up to who's ever going to look at that. I have these things underlined so I can give them to you and you can forward them to the other committees. And I'm assuming it's going to go to the school department?
That's correct.
Okay. And those are the only two comments I would have on it. Okay. Who is up? Oh, Justina?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Janet said. And I think also there's a danger of overloading the channel. It was once that the select board is videotaped, and I know that a lot of people watch it because they tell me various things of seeing me on it. And I think it's really optimistic to think that people have time to tune into all these different committees. I was already sort of shocked that they looked at the select board. So I think that we have to think about our goal here. Just slapping everything up on the channel won't necessarily, I just kind of question what the outcome is. It's going to be so much stuff up there.
Well, there won't be repeats.
At this point, on your select board policy on policy, we're taking the first step only, which is to send it to everyone and ask for their input. Yeah. So we will, once we have input, we would bring it back to you, and then you could decide whether you felt that this was a good select board policy, and if you don't feel it's a good select board policy, then you would not adopt it.
Okay. I see. So we'll have a chance.
It will come back to you after you've had comments from everybody.
I see. Okay.
Janet? Jude was up at the mic.
Thank you, Janet. Jude Ahern. I just want to remind some people of a few things. It wasn't until December of 2017 that your meetings were easily found on the website. We would have to go to Tom's Vimeo account, and so it hasn't been that long, and I think the effects have been tremendous. Yeah. And it's, you know what's, we do have time to watch all those meetings. And if we don't have time now, we might in the future. And we want all of the meetings taped. I'm speaking for a lot of people. And I want to pick up on something you said, Janet, initially, which is how do we make it so that the town meetings are recorded? I don't want to leave it to the moderator, especially this last town meeting. So let's find a solution to also pick up on finding solutions like you've been lecturing us as to how we ensure that our town meetings are recorded. Always. Well, doesn't matter that Danny thinks it's a good idea now. Furthermore, the Cape Cod Times had an interesting point when they did their Sunshine Week, whenever that was, about all this, that videos don't hold the same retention requirements as written minutes. And I think we should consider, saying that we will indeed keep them in perpetuity and not just, I think it's as little as 6 months. So these are all issues that absolutely deserve a thoughtful discussion.
So one of the things that also happens all town meetings are recorded, right? Yeah, they're all recorded. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right, so beyond that too, though, is to have it separate maybe from the cable is we have our own people recording them, right? Does Mia does all the recording at town meeting? So the other thing is with town meeting especially, there's a lot of privacy that goes with showing who's voting with their hands, who's voting. So that's also another issue. Maybe Mia can address that.
Hi, thank you for having this on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, Denny, you were up there.
No, Denny first.
I was just going to point out, I'd like to know how much this is going to cost.
Right.
Because I don't think we've got a bottomless pit.
Mia works for free.
Well, Mia can't cover it all.
Yeah, I know. That's been a concern all along too. And then we're back to where are all the videos? Everything's stored. I mean, is it on the cloud or is it in a file cabinet, or where are all the videos stored?
Oh, they're on VHS tapes in a file cabinet.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I only work for free from my mother, for the record.
Okay.
And so I'm paid, and Dan can answer this more specifically, but I'm paid and the equipment is paid for all out of the Comcast Receipts Fund,
Okay.
which cannot be used for any other purpose, unless I'm wrong. And we're currently renegotiating a 10-year contract with them, so for the next 10 years at least, that's how this is going to be funded. And in 10 years, who knows, maybe we'll all have microchips and we won't need me. Everything is stored on our video server, our streaming video server. I have it on DVD copy and I have it on hard drives. If you don't have it in 3 places, you don't have it. And I know that tonight is not the night for discussion. I do hope that you choose to have it on the agenda. I'm sorry I couldn't be here earlier. I just finished work. But if you do have it on the agenda for discussion next time, I will make myself available to answer any questions. And I just want to say that in 2019, given the schedules of young people, working people, and geography of the people who pay taxes here but don't live here, the prohibition of access to information via the internet is the prohibition of public access. That's just life now. And to not have these meetings made available when these boards and committees, the regulatory ones, are deciding what happens to Wellfleet's public land, our taxpayer revenue, our public bylaws, and our long-term planning, to not have that made available in a realistic way to the citizens, I don't think that's just. And that's all I wanted to say.
Very well said. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve Oliver. In answer to your question about town meeting with people putting their hands up on a vote, we ought to adopt Eastham's method of the clicker system. That would be the way to go. And I think you'd get a much more honest vote if we did it that way, because people, let's be honest, are embarrassed sometimes to vote on something because they know their friend isn't going to like the fact that they stuck their hand up when they thought they shouldn't. So we really should do that.
I know, I've talked to Eastham about it. It doesn't always work perfectly, and I think it costs like $20,000. But I've suggested that, and I know sooner or later we'll go to that. It's the first time Eastham used it, their town meeting ended like in 3 hours. They were out before 10 o'clock because there weren't retakes of voice votes.
Can I say one thing? I'm sorry. I try really hard not to put people on camera when they raise their hands at town meeting for that reason. In fact, I don't think I did it at all this year. And I also tape the town meetings in Orleans, and I don't do it there because I think it's bad policy. So just for the record, if we have a standing vote, you won't be taped.
Good to know.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
So to address that one point, I've thought about it a lot. And until we live in a dictatorship or are under a government where people are punished for their free expression in public of what they believe, yeah, it's scary to stick your hand up. But you know what? We get to be ourselves. And I think it's good to have that happen, because for really expensive votes and for certain other votes, we then get to go to the ballot box and vote in private. So I get it. It's scary to vote, but, you know, I want to hear what the moderator has to say.
Yes. Mr. Silverman.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time talking about town meeting, but just 2 things. One, to your earlier question and to the issue that Ms. Ahern brought up, aside from state law and our charter, which specifies certain things that are going to happen, we also have bylaws that say specific things about town meeting. So if there was a really pressing need or pressing desire to make sure that town meeting was being videotaped, there could be a bylaw conceivably adopted that said all town meetings shall be videotaped. If there was and that would be separate. That would be a bylaw that the town would vote on and adopt as a bylaw for governing town meeting. Right now we have a bylaw that says town meeting shall start at 7 p.m. I think there's some talk about maybe trying to change that. But that would be to answer your question and Ms. Ahern's question, if you wanted to ensure that it was going to be videotaped despite what one or another moderator might want, you would ask for a bylaw or propose a bylaw which the town would then get to vote on as to whether or not they will be taped. To just very quickly on the subject of the automatic clickers, A, it's very expensive. B, we don't take that many counted votes. Most of the time, the votes are pretty overwhelming one way or another. And just for a point of interest, it was brought up at the Truro Town meeting this year. There was a proposal to move to an electronic voting system, and the debate that took place was exactly around the subject that Ms. Wilson was talking about, is the distinction between a private vote at a ballot box and town meeting, which was designed to be an open meeting of citizens of the town. The history of town meeting is that townspeople gathered and in the open discussed town affairs, and as fellow citizens of the town stood up and made their votes counted. So interestingly, after a fairly exhaustive discussion at the Truro Town meeting decided no, they liked the standing count, and they decided they did not want to move to the electronic system. So aside from the cost, which again, it runs in the neighborhood of $20,000 a meeting, I don't think it's necessary. I'm personally opposed to it, and I'd like to see us continue the way we're going. But again, that's ultimately a decision for the town if they want to go that way.
So this is reminding me that we have to follow up with everyone's suggestions of how to improve town meeting. And it's been forgotten. So maybe we could, for a work committee, could talk about the town meeting. You know, remember when Danny came back in May and other people had suggestions on how to make town meeting go more smoothly? That would be a good work committee. Yeah. Yes, Ms. Baumgarten.
One more thing. I would be happy to bring in documentation of the numbers of people who watch these. I don't think most people watch them all the way through. I think people use these videos as reference, so think about it that way. The number that I know off the top of my head, the last Shellfish Advisory Board meeting within 6 days had over 2,500 views. And I know, you're very popular. Wow. Those boards are very highly watched. Your board is very highly watched. There are others who hit in the thousands. Yes, go ahead.
It was the 2,500 from the last Shellfish Advisory. I wouldn't take any. I think that's an outlier given the importance of that meeting. I'd be delighted if the meetings were watched all the time, but I worked in cable television. It was always really hard to get ratings. So I'm all for this and all for open government and all for access, and I think you and Judah Hearn said great things. I'm just questioning whether, you know, for all that effort, anybody's going to watch it. And I know you've got a grant so that, or you're going to be, it's not costing the town. So that, I just didn't want us to get into a position where we were spending a ton of money and then like 3 people watch the meeting.
They have all had many more viewers than 3. The 2,500 is actually not an anomaly for the Shellfish Advisory Board. Those have all been over 2,000. Your meetings are usually over 2,000. The ones that are very low ranked are the ones that don't make like regulatory decisions, like the recycling committee. But the others have really high numbers. I don't have a way to get the TV numbers, but there are additional views from that as well.
No, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Well, I think town meeting went smoothly because many people watch the selectmen's meetings and the forum meetings, and they really understood the issues this year. I was really impressed with how well people understood what we were talking about. It was really amazing. So we'll keep going.
Okay, and if you want me to bring any information next time, please send me an email and I'll bring anything you want to know.
Madam
Chair.
Chair.
Can we move on?
Yeah,
What?
just one thing. One of the good things about this policy, right, is in B, it says additional boards and commissions may be recorded. So we could like bank back if it was a financial issue. And I want to, being the minute nerd, I have to tell you that whenever we're going to have some kind of legal issue, which is the kind of thing that can happen with regulatory boards, it's very, very good to have the exact words. It puts more pressure on the
No, we all
boards.
understand the value of video or videotaping or whatever we
Yes,
call it.
but let me finish, please. And, for example, when I'm looking at the minutes and checking, right, getting those facts in there from the videos for our minutes is key when there's going to be a legal issue. So,
yeah, no, that's why we do it. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to approval of the Herring River MOU number 4.
So can I hit a few high points?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a document which does not include Truro, and Truro in December.
Can you speak a little bit closer?
Oh, yeah, sorry. This is a document, MOU 4, supersedes MOU 3, which included Truro. And Truro, as we know, has decided not to be an applicant, a proponent, a member of the Herring River Executive Council. And they did a vote in December, and they formally have left. And if we approve this document, which I hope we do, that will be all we need to have them officially not with us. That's the first point I wanted to make. Because we've seen on this board a whole other set of pieces of paper about that, but we don't need to do them. The second thing is, some of the high points for me that are different, that I think are a good idea, is the membership of the Herring River Executive Council is now going to be 5 people.
Keep talking into the mic.
5 people,
hold the
yes.
mic closer
right.
to you.
Sorry, 5 people. It's going to be 3 people from Wellfleet and 2 people from the park, which is good. And on occasion, we're going to be able to vote on the Herring River Executive Council. Usually it's going to be about arriving at a consensus, but a key thing that's new, and I think it's a good thing, is it can be 2 members of the Select Board and the town administrator, or the Select Board can designate other members for the Executive Council, which would mean that we could choose people, if we wished, who couldn't be adequately, representing us from the board. There could be occasions when none of the people on the board had enough background or they didn't want to do it, and at that point we can say, okay, we'd like to appoint this person, just like we do for other boards and committees. So that's an option. It's not mandated, which is really good. A second thing that's different is the Herring River Restoration Committee, which has been operating now for years, starting from all the way back 14 years ago. Some of those people, same people are on it, is now going to be a more normal group for working on wetland restoration projects. They are not going to be meeting under the open meeting law. However, they're going to remain transparent because their decisions and so forth are all going to be reported to the Executive Council. And moving forward, they can move more efficiently. In other words, they all the time have subcommittees that have to have 3 people working intensively on something, and then they bring it to the larger committee, which, if you remember, I've been sitting in on for years. And what I've heard repeatedly is, we have never had to do this in this formal way. We do the research, we do the science, we discuss it with each other, we produce materials, and then we give it to the Executive Council or a deciding body, you see. And it's been very hard for them. And so moving forward, they want to have this new, shall we say, structure in terms of not what they're doing, but how they're reporting and how they're interacting. And it's not about it happening secretly. It's just so massive. So all the material is available to any one of us. It's just that they organize getting it together in a different way. So another thing that's different.
So are these what you're saying in the body of the MOU?
Yes, they
and are you changing the language or adding language?
No, I'm telling you.
You're just describing what's in here.
I'm just highlighting
changes.
a few things that really struck me because I'm so familiar with it. And
thought
there
you
are
were
other
changing.
things. We've all read it. But another thing that I really like is that it's been kept, is that the Executive Council makes decisions over a lot of things, including, and this is kept from MOU 3, the water control structures, which are the dikes, with input from the technical group. And we want to keep that. We want advised decisions being made, and we want the Executive Council to make the decisions about how much to open the dike, when to open the dike, all according to various permitting, guidelines and requirements that we have. So let's see, we can make, that's pretty much it for the big kind of things for me. The rest of it looked good. I got to work on it with our lawyer and said repeatedly, or I said a number of times, we're working on this. I've worked on the other 3 MOUs. I'm sitting in on the committee, but whatever I'm saying doesn't really count because it's the 5 of us who are going to vote on this. And so we're seeing it tonight really for the first time, or we saw it in our homework for the first time. And we have Carol Ridley, the project manager, here. The one issue I had that I wanted to bring up was on page 6, and I briefly highlighted it for all of you before the meeting. I said, please look at this. I didn't discuss it. Page 6 has a section that is called Membership and Decision Making.
Yeah, that's right here. I got it.
Good. And the last paragraph in this had something that I felt concerned about, which is different from MOU 3. And it's reasonable, and apparently the lawyer spent a lot of time on this. But what it says is, if there's an emergency, like a real emergency, a hurricane, a tsunami, whatever like that, either party, the town or the park, can make a unilateral decision about what to do. And given that it's just one town and the park, my thought was, well, everybody can get together in an emergency, in my experience, with select boards. But that got weighed by the various attorneys, and the park has a kind of different status than we do in terms of deciding things. We don't want the town to unilaterally make a decision about closing the dike or opening it in an emergency and doing damage to a huge amount of park property. And we don't want the park with the Mill Creek dike, which lets water into and out of mainly the Cape Cod, I can never remember, the yacht club, the golf club, CCYC. We want this to always be something that the 2 entities decide together, whatever it is, even in emergency. So I think we should add 1 sentence at the end of this paragraph, and it would cover an emergency situation in my experience. We should, I think, add, both parties shall make every attempt to reasonable attempt to communicate in an emergency. What that says here is, if there's some real problem, we got to call the park, and they have to call us, whoever's aware.
I think that would happen.
No, and it didn't happen in the 70s, and our, attorney said that seems good. It's just saying you've got to make contact, and it didn't happen in the 70s, and it could not happen again, and it's very easy, and it would probably happen anyway. You're right, Kathleen. But it's not us sitting here, it's a select board sitting here in 10 years, okay? That's the reason that sentence is, I think, harmless. Otherwise, I'm good to go with it.
Should you decide to add that sentence, knowing that what Select Board Member Wilson said, I have already adjusted it into the contract, so we have it both ways. So you can sign it with the sentence or without the sentence if you're okay with the rest of the document.
No, I think it's probably good to add as much information.
And I would say our attorney signed off on it and said it's okay.
Yeah.
We do have to run it by the other attorneys and make sure that they would be okay with it as well, and they haven't had a chance to respond yet.
Okay. But it'd be good to get this done.
Oh, yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Kathleen.
Through you to Helen, having read 4 of these now, is this the last one?
Yes. I tell you the reason, what jump-started this, in my opinion, was that Truro wanted to leave.
Yeah,
right.
We know that.
Yeah. So the thing is that
so we're good
we
now?
can, yes, and we can amend this if we want to, but my
my take on this is that it is what we'll need going forward. And instead of redoing the whole thing, this really put it into, a lot of the substance is the same, but there's been quite a few changes in language and so forth, and it addresses a more current situation than MOU 3, but there's also language in it, as there was with the previous MOU, that says we can amend it. And that's a reasonable thing for a document like this.
Yeah, good. Do you want to make a motion, Helen?
Oh, gee, okay, yes.
Comments from the
Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any comments from the audience?
Okay.
Go ahead.
So,
There's a comment from the audience.
oops, sorry.
Yeah, I'm Laura Runkle. I've been interested in the project mostly from the perspective of an abutter, and I know a lot of people in our area who are abutters. We were just talking earlier about the Mayo Creek area, and we had a lot of concerned citizens who would be impacted if something went wrong. And I thought it was a nice idea from Mr. Barrett, I believe. Merritt?
Bennett, Mr. Bennett here,
thank you.
yes.
To have a MOU between the abutters and the proponents. And in that way, I think we would have less of this concern where people feel like they're not sitting at this table, they're not on the panels that are making the decisions. We have to, you know, potentially consider other options for our own interests. So I think that would be a great thing if we could include some measures. I believe in that case it was town water hookup in case something really did go wrong. Things could go wrong in the Herring River restoration too, and I think some direct link between the abutters and the people who are proposing this to do would be great.
We'll bring it to the board next time. I don't even know, when are we meeting?
Are you asking when the executive council is meeting? I would like through you to ask the project manager, Carol Ridley, to address some of this. Is that okay?
Sure. Good evening. Carol Ridley, project coordinator for the Herring River Restoration Project. Would you like me to address the last point? Is that okay? I'd be happy to. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. The Herring River Executive Council, and it's noted in the new MOU, established a Herring River stakeholder group expressly for the purpose of ensuring that you are hearing the advice, the advisory input of a broad cross-section of stakeholder interests in the community as the Executive Council makes its policy decisions and governs the forward motion of the project. And that's a group that consists of 19 members. It's representing property owners in the floodplain. It represents business interests, conservation interests, recreational interests, shellfishing. I don't have them all memorized, but it's a wide cross-section of folks from the region, many folks here from Wellfleet, and still representatives from the Truro community, because the system is partially in that community as well. So the project ongoing has that advisory input from the stakeholder group. In fact, the group just met this past week. The other point I would make is through the Friends of Herring River, and I know you've heard this before, but I think it bears repeating, have worked really diligently to reach out to property owners, doors open for anyone who has questions, to go to their offices or call them up or visit the website and email them to get information about the project and how it may or may not have any bearing on their property. So that's another point. Lastly, I would just note that for any property that for which there has been identified the need for some structural measure to protect against any impact during restoration, there would be formal agreements, perhaps generations of them as the project progresses. So that would be an actual written legal agreement between the property owner and the project to ensure the safety and completion of that measure to their satisfaction. So.
Good, thank you. And did you want to ask anything else? Okay, thanks. Steve?
Thank you. Steve Oliver. I'm just wondering how this new MOU agreement addresses the liability issue.
Do you want to, I mean, it would be,
I'm gonna
Carol
give-
can
yeah, give it to Carol.
give that.
I can do it.
It's pretty much the same, it's just taking Truro out of the,
The
because
reason
they
I'm
wanted-
asking that is
yeah.
because Truro specifically got out of this project over the liability issue. So that should really, you know, make us take notice that this is a very, very big concern, and it needs to be addressed.
Carol?
Thank you. I would suggest that there were a number of reasons for Truro's decision. And if you compare this MOU with MOU 3, for example, one thing in common is it's very clear in stating that the infrastructure is, you know, if it's infrastructure owned by the town of Wellfleet, it continues to be owned by the town of Wellfleet or by the seashore. So that was stated very clearly in MOU 3 and is stated very clearly in this MOU. So in that effect, there's no change in ownership, and in MOU 3 there were no pieces of infrastructure that were identified as being Truro. So I think your characterization as really no impact or no significant impact is accurate in terms of changing that dynamic.
Respectfully, in Truro, there were 2 culverts and about 300 feet of low-lying road. However, there were no water control structures.
Thank you.
And I have to agree with Ms. Ridley that, having had my nose in this now for years, Truro got out of it for a variety of reasons, and that is according to people on the select board and other people I've spoken with. Liability was an issue, but it was only one of them, okay? So I know that, and you may have had other information.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
Hi, Susan Baumgarten, and I'd like to speak to the liability issue. I actually have other things I want to say, but I'd like to just comment now because it has come up.
And are you referring to MOU 4?
Yes, MOU 4. Truro has pulled out from the entire project because they don't want to be encumbered by finances and liability. In fact, they've become a potential plaintiff and will hold Wellfleet responsible for any damages to their town-owned property and private property. These facts about Truro's withdrawal can be verified through interviews with Truro officials published in the Cape Cod Times, as well as a conversation with Bob Weinstein, chairman of the Truro Board of Selectmen. I spoke with him 2 days ago. Liability was the major issue. So I just want to go on record with that. And with your permission, I have some other comments, but I will wait to say that.
Go ahead, Mr. Hort.
So I think you're speaking of one select person as opposed to the entire board?
No, Bob was speaking to the entire board.
I'm speaking right now.
Okay,
I
thought you were asking me, I'm sorry.
No, I was not. Mr. Weinstein was speaking on behalf of himself. He's no longer the chair of the select board.
He's still the chair, and he was not speaking on his own behalf.
No, he was speaking on his own behalf. We can agree to disagree. But Mr. Weinstein was speaking on his behalf, on his own behalf. He also was representing that town council had advised them to get out of the MOU and the Herring River because of liability projects. The town council, which is the same town council for both Truro and for Wellfleet, spoke up and corrected him publicly to say they had never provided that advice. So where he came up with that information is, you'll have to find out from him.
He said the entire Truro Select Board voted to pull out of the project because of liability. So let's just leave it at that we agreed to disagree.
We'll just leave it at that.
Fine. Okay, good.
Must be on record somewhere. Yep. Good evening. My name is Martin Neske. I am the unfortunate owner of 505 Old Chequesset Neck Road here in Wellfleet. I'm probably going to start this thing off on the wrong foot, but I've heard here tonight, very recently, that all efforts have been made to deal with homeowners. I haven't heard from anybody in years. What are you people talking about? I haven't talked to anybody in years. I have a very, very low house. I had all my building permits, conservation, Board of Health, everything. Now they tell me they're going to flood it. According to Don Palladino, he said that at the last meeting I attended, that they have a right to form to flood an historical wetland, which he said would include the city of Boston. They're all historical wetlands. I have no idea what he's talking about. I haven't found a legal mind anywhere that agrees with that. I haven't found a legal mind anywhere that agrees with anything that you can do to infringe on anybody's private property as a right for the community. That includes flooding my land. If my lot gets flooded, not only do I lose the house, but I lose the well, I lose the septic, I lose my garden, I lose everything. I don't know where people think that they've got the right to do that, and I don't know why people are running around saying that they've made all these arrangements with these people that they've never talked to. Does that make any sense to you? Doesn't make any sense to me. There's got to be some kind of liability in here. I've already spent $20,000 on this, and I intend to continue going. You're not going to get rid of me. I'm not going away. Okay. The idea that they can do all this stuff as arrogantly as they're doing it is beyond me. I've been involved in politics at the local level all my life. I've never seen anything like this where you think they can just steamroll over a private citizen. And I'm not the only one. There's 322 of us. Mine happens to be I think, probably one of the 2 or 3 most severely affected. If they didn't think my house was going to be affected, why did Portnoy and Palladino and Peabody and Tim Smith and this whole gang of these people come to my house with a ream of plans to fill my house with gravel? Put a berm around the house if that didn't work. Put another berm around if that doesn't work. They offered everything except to buy the place. They even considered picking it up. When I finally told them they could put a berm around it and tie it into the seashore land next to me, which somehow, I don't know how it became seashore land, was Woodward's land, now suddenly it's seashore land. I don't know how that happened without an act of Congress. But nonetheless, they decided they weren't going to do that. And I said, we're all done talking. And that's the last conversation I've had with Ms. Ridley, and that was years ago. There hasn't been any contact from you or anybody else regarding this matter. So there's no insurance. There's no unilateral protection for anybody. My property line is Mill Creek, also known as Snake Creek. When I bought the property, it was about 6 inches down from the top. Now it's flooded. It's right to the top. Any more water in it, it's going to be right in my house. Any more. At the time when I bought it, the mosquito control people used to go up and down the stream, they'd clean it out, and they'd take care of the mosquitoes and everything else. Now apparently the powers that be say they can't do that anymore. We don't seem to have a mosquito problem, but we certainly have a water problem. So I don't know why that is. But nonetheless, I don't know where else this is going to go. I traveled a long way to come here to make myself known here. I don't know what they're going to do with this. Memorandum of understanding should involve everybody, shouldn't it? Should it involve the people that you're planning on flooding?
So there's, well, I'll let Carol explain, but there's a number of different committees, entities, and this is just between the town of Wellfleet and the seashore, this particular memorandum of understanding, but I'll let Carol explain.
Thank you. I'll just clarify a couple of points, and I think Mr. Niski has already acknowledged that there has been communication between him and the project over the years. So I will say, I don't want to get into the particulars of any particular property owner, but I will say that for Phase 1 restoration, which is the phase for which permits are being currently sought, there are agreements with property owners, understandings for any property owner that requires an on-site mitigation measure on their property. So that work has
When do you
occurred.
intend to do that?
Okay,
so if a property, Mr. Niski, and I don't believe yours is one of them, if a property requires an on-site mitigation measure for Phase 1 restoration, we have understandings with those property owners. So I just wanted to clarify that point so that it's not misunderstood that there are folks who have not been addressed. With respect to the point raised about the changes in tidal hydrology on property, the project will be permitted as an ecological restoration limited project. That enables an applicant to seek, for the purpose of restoring degraded wetlands, which this project's purpose is that, allows applicants to alter hydrology of existing wetlands. So all of the land that will be that will receive tidal flow as a result of the restoration is currently wetland. As was noted earlier, most of it, 95% of it, is in the Cape Cod National Seashore, but it's all currently wetland in some small slivers on, I think, 12 acres on 17 different parcels. There may be a piece of wetland that will become saltier because of the tidal flow. That is allowed under the Ecological Restoration Limited Project status. So that's possible to do from a regulatory standpoint. That can be permitted. The other point I want to make, and just getting back, I think, to the matter at hand, which is the MOU. We're sort of litigating a lot of issues with respect to the project here. The MOU, I just wanted to point out, has been reviewed thoroughly. I think it was alluded to by Helen, by Town Council, by Seashores Council, and Council for the project. So in terms of concerns about the town's status in the project, I think those interests were very thoroughly reviewed by your council.
Yeah, there were.
Can I add one thing to that? And MOU 4 builds substantially on MOU 3, which was created by a group of representatives from Truro, the park, Wellfleet, Harry Tacanian was on it, and others, the Friends. It was a really good working drafting group. Then it was submitted to lawyers. It was, worked on some more. Then it was submitted to the board, the select board then. And MOU 3 builds on it. It didn't come out of nowhere.
Okay.
You're telling me that my property's not going to be affected. Then why are these people all coming around telling me they want to do this, that, and the other thing at the property? Why did they come out and do all that?
So
they had nothing better to do than spend thousands of dollars on all these plans?
So these are questions for Herring River Restoration Project meetings that it's probably a good idea to go to them as many times, and I would guess they might be recorded. I don't know. They're not recorded. Okay. So tonight here we're just talking about the memorandum of understanding between the seashore and Wellfleet because Truro's dropped out, and that's what's on the agenda. So we're not going to get into the details. Have you never been to a Herring River Restoration meeting or a forum meeting or anything on it?
Yes,
okay, so you know about it.
I'll pat each other on the back. Oh,
yeah. Okay, so you shouldn't have any questions then if you've been to the meetings. Yeah. Good. Mr. Bent, did you want to ask something?
I only really wanted to ask a question, perhaps either through the chair or otherwise. We just had a pretty substantial conversation here about being open, and I have attended some of these meetings, or I did attend a meeting.
Of the Herring River.
Yeah, and we were told that it was not a public hearing. And Carol was gracious enough to let us speak and ask some questions. So moving forward with this expressed interest in stakeholder concerns, I guess I want to understand why the MOU changes language to exclude public hearing status for input. Somebody said that it was complicated, but it kind of seems somewhat disingenuous with regards to working together in this. And I guess that's the question that I would have. I have been hired by Mr. Nitsky to take a look at some of the issues. I've seen the plans. I've looked at the phase 1, and there are some questions, and at the right time we'll bring that up. Primarily the concern of those areas that are wetlands that are now part of the Chequesset Neck Country Club that is a intensively turf managed piece of property with pesticides and metals. So I guess I'd like to speak to the issue of the open meeting laws and why they are excluded here, and where can we speak, or how can we participate in the stakeholder meetings?
Carol, do you want to address that? And there was just a stakeholder meeting. Was that a closed meeting?
No.
No. There was just one a week ago, right?
May I please address that? When I was highlighting for the board a change that is about efficiency and practicality. For the Herring River Restoration Committee, which is the scientists and people that come and do research with them, I stated very clearly, and I just sit in on it because I'm on the executive council now, but I sit in on it because they allow me to, and they let you come in that day.
Correct.
But you understand, if you have 3 members having to brainstorm and work intensively together, not the whole committee, it becomes really impractical to do that efficiently under the open meeting law. Sometimes they have to do it very quickly. That does not mean the information will not be available. The stakeholders group is definitely held under the open meeting law. And my main concern is that information is available to everybody who wants it, and that will continue, if I'm not mistaken. I actually brought it up from the audience at a Herring River Restoration Committee meeting, but maybe Carol would like to address a little more of this.
Thank you. So the Herring River Executive Council is the decision-making governing entity for the project. It meets under open meeting law, and it's spelled out in the MOU. It has created a stakeholders group, and that group also meets under the open meeting law. It's created by the Executive Council. The assemblage of project partners, which is the technical team, if you will, referred to in the MOU, these are representatives of federal agencies, not subject to Massachusetts law, open meeting law. They attend these meetings at the instigation of their agencies. So they're there as individual representatives of the agencies, bringing their expertise, working on a number of similar projects in other areas. So the description that's in the MOU is a better reflection of how the partners interact and work and provide technical input, share information, and provide technical input that may funnel up to the Executive Council, which is the decision-making entity. So I think that's the key difference here. The other point I want to make is that the difference between a public meeting and a public hearing. There will be public hearings for the purpose of the regulatory process. So as we submit applications for permits to the Cape Cod Commission, to other state agencies, there are comment periods and public hearings that are built into that process. That's a little bit different from a public posted meeting. And I think to Mr. Bennett's point about how to access the technical team to review issues in depth, I would suggest that that's a meeting that you would request, or Mr. Niski would request, with, perhaps through the Friends of Herring River, to meet with particular members of the technical team depending upon the issue you want to discuss in depth. And I think that would be the more appropriate venue to have that in-depth discussion with Mr. Niski, bring any consultants you wish, to that one-on-one meeting or small group meeting, which has the express purpose of reviewing your particular questions or plans or what have you. That's not the purpose of the assemblage of project partner agency representatives through the technical team. That's not where that activity happens.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So what's the connection between the Executive Committee and the Friends of Herring River? Was the Friends of Herring River actually a Wellfleet body, or is it what is it?
It's a nonprofit group for the support of the Herring River. They raise money, there's membership, they disperse information, brochures, right?
And that's where these meetings are advertised through the Friends? No?
There's actually, there's 4 entities or 5 entities, 4 different committees.
No.
4, 5?
So if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So the Executive Council, can take input and assistance, as noted in here, in administering the project from any organization or individual. So you can, and I'm referring to you, that the Executive Council can take advisory input from the stakeholder group. It can take advisory input from individual project partners or from the technical group that's the assemblage of the project partners, from the Friends of Herring River, or any other group that the Executive Council desires. The Friends of Herring River has for many years assisted with the administration of contracts and grants for the purposes of the work of the project. But they are a private nonprofit organization.
So they're funding the research.
No.
No.
Well, they're
Sorta.
administering grants that are obtained for the purpose of doing the work. So
They're
from a
writing
number of
the
different,
grants?
excuse me?
They're writing the grants?
Correct.
And where then is, if Mr. Nitsky wants to attend a stakeholders meeting or go to any of these other meetings, where is that advertised? On the town website?
Yes.
Under the Friends of Herring River?
The stakeholder group,
No.
if I may?
Yeah, go ahead.
The stakeholder group meetings are posted on the town websites, are actually posted on the Wellfleet website and the Town of Truro website. They're posted with both towns, and they're also posted on the Friends of Herring River website.
So I would think that
Stakeholder group.
the stakeholder meetings, you must have emails of every stakeholder.
There is a page on the Friends of Herring River website for the Executive Council, and if you go to that page, you'll see another link to the stakeholders group. That group has, a chair. It has a structure,
Yeah.
and it has they set agendas for their meetings, and some members are here.
Yeah.
They can speak to that. But that information, those meetings are posted, and that information is available to the public.
So stakeholder meetings you don't send out an email to your members?
I'm a stakeholder. I wouldn't mind saying something here. I think it addresses
And I
that
just want to
question.
say that this is not what the subject of our meeting is tonight, but I know that there's questions, so.
Right. Yeah, this is the
Identify
stakeholders-
yourself, please.
Laura Runkle again.
Wait. Oh, you are, okay. Sorry.
I look different now.
No, you don't. We're going on 3 hours. That's why it's
Yeah,
starting to look
yeah,
different.
yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that the only place I've ever seen these posted, our meetings, the stakeholders group, was by going through a link at the Friends site, and there's the Executive Council there, and then you can find the stakeholders group information there. I've never seen it on the town website, and I know that there's never been a public notice. We've been trying to get that out there so that more people are aware. I think there's going to be a newsletter at some point, but it's not been out there yet. So it's a little difficult, I think, for stakeholders meetings to be, people to be aware of them when they're happening. And they've been very sporadic, I think you'd agree, right? Yeah.
Let
Well,
Carol go first. Yeah.
I am aware that the agendas are sent to the towns for posting, so they're at least posted in the town halls if they're not put on the websites. So they are given to the towns for posting.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Gail.
Ferguson.
More into the mic, please.
Yeah. I checked the town website for the last stakeholders meeting, which happened last week, and it was on the calendar.
Yeah. So I guess you have to check it regularly, but why doesn't your group get together and get everybody's emails and notify people? I mean, yeah.
That idea has been floated, and it was decided that they didn't want...
I can't.
Oh, yeah, I can hear you, but you got to go to the microphone.
That idea was floated, and it was decided that people didn't want, for privacy reasons, I guess, all these...
Well, then...
but I agree with you. I think it would be easier. I also email people information, so, and only if they want to see it.
Yeah, can I say something more about the stakeholders meetings? So I've been to all of them in the audience. I'm not a stakeholder. And they all have representation from different groups. But my experience with such situations in general is anybody can contact anybody on the stakeholders group. And, not only can you go to the meeting, not only could you request before the meeting of the chair that you might get to speak or not, but you can fill the ear of a stakeholder and say, will you please bring this up? And in fact, that happened at the last meeting, and that's a good way for this kind of thing to function. You know, there was a stakeholders meeting at another stage in the Herring River project a long time ago, and wonderful Mark Forrest was, you know, would show up from the county or the state at that point. I forget what he was representing. And it worked like that too. In other words, the stakeholders are supposed to be like wicks, bringing public input into the meetings.
Janet, can I make a motion?
Yes, so I was just going to say, we've got to wrap this up because this is about us agreeing to the MOU for, and there will be, in the summertime, there's meetings of everybody, there's presentations, and I guess you got to be a little more proactive in looking on that website, or start an email. I mean, that's the easiest way if you want your group to communicate, get an email list going.
This is about the MOU 4.
All right.
And I have, it's one page, and it's 3.5 minutes, and I would like to go on record with this, and it actually speaks to what you mentioned right at the beginning. I know it's late, and I won't belabor it, but these are suggestions, and these are from many people in the community, and I'd like the chance to go on record and read this. I will also submit it to you so you can have it in writing, but I would like to read it with your
So why did
permission.
you wait till now to present that?
Because I wanted to let everybody else speak. It seemed like there was a lot to talk about.
What does the board want to do?
I would like to hear 3.5 minutes, and I bet you timed it.
I did time it several times. Okay, thank you. You may not agree with these solutions, Janet, but these are solutions that people have, or suggestions. The proposed Herring River restoration is an experimental program, and Wellfleet is the experimental subject. There is no evidence that the alleged benefits can be achieved and the potential risks avoided. There's no guarantee that the experiment will be adequately funded over time to cover unforeseen circumstances. I've already spoken about Truro and how they have pulled out and why they have pulled out. And like Truro, the Wellfleet Board has a fiduciary responsibility to protect Wellfleet taxpayers. The draft MOU 4 does not offer this protection. The proposed restoration has been stalled for 3 years since the FEIR was approved. Here are several key suggestions for modifying the MOU 4 to protect Wellfleet so that the project can move forward. Number 1, make approval of the MOU 4 contingent upon National Park Service funding of liability insurance and first-party insurance to protect private homeowners, businesses, the shellfishing community, and taxpayers. 2, create a better governance structure. Establish a scientific and technical advisory board to advise the Herring River Executive Council. And here I agree with John Reel. There has been no peer-reviewed evidence as part of this project. There has been no peer review. This has been a project that has been done by people who are interested in the project, and that's great, and they're smart, and they're from lots of very good agencies, but good science depends on peer review. There has not been peer review. Excuse me, I'm talking.
Excuse me. I'm going to say point of order too, so just please read what you have written and submit it.
Yes.
And there has been peer review. But
there
go ahead.
has not been peer review.
Just
okay,
keep
we'll
reading
agree
what
to
you're gonna
disagree.
read,
There's
right?
not been peer review. So this body would be comprised of members of the current Herring River Restoration Committee along with independent outside experts. The work of this body would be subject to the open meeting laws to engage the community and build public trust. 3, establish a self-organizing, self-governing stakeholder group comprised of homeowners, business owners, shell fishermen, and taxpayers who could provide direct input to the Herring River Executive Council. The Herring River stakeholder group meetings are infrequent, scripted events during which project proponents control the conversation and sidestep questions like,
so I'm going to interrupt you because I really don't think this has to do with our MOU 4.
Well, it does. These are suggestions for making it better. Replace it with a structure that will empower stakeholders. Strong community engagement and support is vital. 4, require the National Park Service to obtain written permission from all homeowners, regardless of the presence of structures, in order to reduce the risk of private homeowner lawsuits. And I will disagree with Carol Ridley. This is not being permitted as ecological restoration. They are seeking to get it.
Is that written as
way.
part of your statement?
Yes. Well, no, it's not in here, but she brought it
Okay,
up,
so
I was
please
mentioning
just
it.
read the statement.
I'll keep going. Now, according to Bill Henchy, Attorney Bill Henchy, quote, I note that the project proponent has stated publicly that impacts to private properties must be mitigated only if the impact is to a structure. There is no basis in the law for such a conclusion.
Point
the towns
of
of Wellfleet,
Point of order, Madam Chair.
the
These
town
are
of
not-
Wellfleet
these are
and the Cape Cod
opinions
National
and
Seashore
Okay,
not
so
have no more
relevant to
right.
the MOU.
Excuse me.
Okay, so wait, I really, there's point of order because this is not pertinent, so.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It's-
so
it's a-
please, okay, please hand the paper in, and we will put it on the website, and we will include it in our minutes, okay?
There's one more, this one sentence I'm trying to finish, Janet, and it's very,
You've got, all right, then go, one more sentence.
There's no basis in the law for such a conclusion. The town of Wellfleet and the Cape Cod National Seashore would have no more right to flood private property without permission than they would have to park town DPW trucks in private driveways. The number of landowners who will be flooded and have a new regulatory burden, according to the FEIR, totals some 322 property owners. That's it. Now, my last point is actually what Helen mentioned, and I agree with her, and we didn't speak before this, and I will tell you, it's totally is in agreement with her. Protect Wellfleet against unilateral National Park Service decisions. The MOU, and we know what the MOU for language is, and all I wrote here was that Wellfleet and National Park Service boundaries are artificial lines on a map. Actions taken by the seashore can negatively affect Wellfleet, and the converse is true, as Helen pointed out. I would insert language which constrains National Park Service actions in order to prevent harm to Wellfleet, and Helen made a suggestion, which I thought was a good one.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I only made it for emergency situations.
Yep.
And
So
otherwise, all decisions are made by an intergovernmental body called the Executive Council.
I skipped that part of it. I
So
said this was referring to
what
that.
your motion should be then, if you wish to adopt this, would be the motion as listed in your agenda, only where it says as presented. If you want to take the sentence that
You want to give that to them?
that Helen has used, we would say as amended.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'm ready to make that motion.
Okay, go ahead.
I move to adopt the Memorandum of Understanding 4 between the National Park Service and the town of Wellfleet in regard to the Herring River Restoration Project as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you. So please give that to our secretary.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
And may I just say, thank you for sharing your opinion.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay, Select Board reports?
Yeah, this is a very quick one, and I'm happy to hear that 2,500 people saw the Shellfish Committee meeting that was posted, and inadvertently 4 people from the Select Board showed up. So in the interest and the spirit of the open meeting law, I want to say that it was a 3-hour meeting during which, and Ms. Bacon had to leave partway through, but please watch the video because we shared some opinions, and I could go over the points, but just in the interest of the open meeting law compliance, watch it on the video, please. This is sort of,
Okay, so that's your report? Okay.
And a lot of people have, so that's good.
Okay. Usually a report has more meat to it rather than an announcement.
Because
but,
Mike wasn't here, and because
Okay.
the material is available, I thought I'd cut it short.
Thank you, Helen. Good.
Yeah, be grateful, yeah.
All right, yeah, guess so. Anyone else with a report? Kathleen?
I wanted to report that I'm not sure of the day. Dan will have to help me if it was Friday or Thursday. I met for the first time with the task force for 95 Lawrence Road. It's a very smart, committed group that's going to be doing the footwork for the RFP for that project, and in a very short period of time, an hour, a lot was discussed. We're being led and shepherded, if you want to use that word, by an individual who I greatly respect, which is Lara Henry, from the Housing Assistance Corporation. She's had a knee replacement surgery, but she's committed to getting us through this process. I learned a lot in a very short period of time. I will be reporting as those meetings are ongoing as to where we are and what we are doing.
Good. Great. Madam Chair, that was on Friday, the 21st.
Thank you. It's a
Because
blur.
then Kathleen came up and did another meeting with the Select Board.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to say something about dredging, that we met and had just discussed about working with the county once we get to phase 2 and phase 3, working with the county. And we have some great people on the board: Dennis Murphy, Chris Algeyer, and
How do you know that?
Mike and Alfred, all kind of talking about what we need, and we're actually getting next time a proposal for what the equipment will be, the costs, things like that. But it was all discussed about costs and equipment. Yes.
This isn't a report, it's a question. I saw an email from you about costumes for 4th of July. Were you kind enough to order costumes, or should we get
I got them from Amazon, and I just figured there's 4 of us, and we can split them or not, or you can get your own. And I got 2 capes for whoever wants to be heroes, and I got 2 sequined cowboy hats, because I like cowboy hats, but they're 4th of July cowboy hats, so I don't care. And if you want to get your own thing going too, add to it.
Well, I thought that was charming of you.
And I already covered my costume.
Whatever, Helen.
Fat person.
Yeah, you've mentioned that 3 times?
Twice.
No, last week you mentioned it too. So thank you. We will look forward to seeing you. Yeah. All right, whatever. Okay, Select Board reports. Town Administrator's report. Any questions on it?
Yeah, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Hort. Has there been a second complaint about noise?
No. And I've spoken with both parties, and they're having a good conversation at this point, so there's no need to bring it forward at this point. They're talking amongst themselves, so.
We're actually having the band sign an agreement that they realize that at 10 o'clock,
that's great,
the decibel level has to be reduced.
And
if they don't sign that agreement, we really can't accommodate them.
Yeah.
We've only had one individual that did not,
Yeah.
And maybe that you could let us see that agreement, or they could let us see the agreement, so that we can include it with other places that have music too.
Madam Chair?
What?
Yeah, so this isn't a topic for us, but I'm happy to know that. And I think just simply giving them a copy of our bylaw is where I'd like to leave it.
Well, but they didn't even come before us this time. Like, they should have copies of a bylaw when they
They got an entertainment, a license for weekend entertainment from us.
Yeah.
That's
Did they come before us? Do you remember anyone from there coming before us?
No, but part of what happens is, because I bitch and moan, I make a remark about it, is that they just get handed a copy of.
Yeah, when they get their license.
Just to be courteous.
Do you know about that, Courtney, because you're new?
I know about it, Jean knows about it, we've heard about it.
And do you give it to them?
If Jean gives it to them, I'm sure she does, or she tells them to them.
I would think she's
she's
all right.
on top of what she does.
So they're well aware of it by this time. Okay.
Okay, so.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This isn't directly a comment on the report, but Dan, I want to once again thank you for the diligence with which you send us emails updating us on various ongoing things, like
really
the assistant TA search and so forth. They're really, really helpful.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Future concerns.
Do future concerns?
Yes.
So one of the things that I heard at that meeting we had in Chatham from Open Cape, they're the cable company, right? Open Cape, the Wi-Fi or whatever.
The
fiber optics. I asked them, I said, so when are we going to get, this? What's it going to do? And he said, this is the first I've heard him say that, we have to submit a proposal, and then they bid on it. So we have to, so we've got to come up with where we want it to go, who we want it to affect, and all of that. So that was the first I've heard of that. I'm sure you haven't heard of it either. I've never heard of that, and this has been like 5 years in the making.
I spoke with Lily Green this week.
Yeah.
And she mentioned that she had had conversations with Open Cape and that they had promised to extend the fiber optic network out to the beaches.
Yeah.
So she is following up on that.
Okay. But this is for fiber optics in the rest of the town.
Yeah.
That if we really want to get everybody, we need to get a proposal of where it needs to go and how many people. I also think we should have a working meeting on the marijuana host agreement sometime, discuss that. And what was the other thing we were going to have? Oh, and the town meeting suggestions could be possibly part of that. Marijuana host agreement might go on long, though. Helen?
So what we have in the works, and hasn't gotten on an agenda yet, is our first stage of a select board policy about the marijuana. This was one of my future concerns. In other words, I'm chiming in with you.
So,
but wait, we did a practice run on select board policies tonight. That policy about So first we have to do it like that, and then we have to go back and do it again.
So are you for having a working meeting on the host agreement?
I'm having
the new host agreement.
No, I'm for having a regular meeting because it's controversial, and we're making a policy. So I think it should be a regular meeting as the first stage of our doing a policy on how we go forward with, having criteria and having a way to deal with applicants.
Yeah. So a couple meetings ago, we actually agreed to have a work meeting on tweaking our host agreement. So does the rest of the board want to have it in a regular meeting, or do we want to have it in a work meeting?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think one
either.
of the good thing about a working meeting is we can have a little bit more of a relaxed discussion. Helen, I agree with you that it's important and should be, then in front of the.
Yeah, it'll be presented.
And I think there's a couple of other items that would benefit from a working meeting. And if we don't have a lot of ground to cover, we cut the meeting short. But I think we should be in the habit of having them. We've got a bunch of stuff coming up on 208 and the Water Protection Collaborative and all that. So keep it short.
You can cover a broader range of subjects and input on a working meeting, but I'm not saying we would not then present it to this meeting. That would be obvious.
However, I think it's essential that we figure out in the first stage of our policy before we go looking at host agreements and changing them. In other words, we need to know what criteria might be put into one of those agreements.
Right, so that we could do it at a work meeting.
Yes, but first we figure out the policy, right? The first stages of it, and then we apply that to the host agreement. We could do it in the same meeting. Fine, I don't care. A working meeting would be fine with me. Wherever we do it, it's an open meeting, and it'll be taped.
In the working meeting, excuse me for cross-talking, you
It's
can
an
lay
open
your
meeting.
opinion out,
Yeah.
and we can decide how we're going to handle it.
Yeah.
And if you feel, you can say, well, it's important public impact, and boom, 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 and we'll agree with you and move on to the next.
Yeah. I was just putting that out there. We have to work on it however we do it. We do have to figure out the first stage of the policy first, at least the raw bones of it.
Yep.
So that we don't then have to go back to it and do it again.
Yeah.
Okay? Good.
Sounds good.
So I have a concern, which was that. And then it's sort of borderline correspondence, but so today I was handed something by Jean that I said I'd bring to the board. There's a young reporter on the Martha's Vineyard Times who wants to talk to people on select boards that have decided to be called select boards. And I've got her phone number, and I was, bringing this up 10 years ago when the first Charter Review Committee 10 years ago was doing it. And
We can make this really short.
Okay, does anybody want her number, because they might want to talk with her, too?
No, I'll be politically incorrect.
Isn't it kind of obvious why we want to be called select boards?
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
point is, I'm just saying,
Sorry,
she
Mike.
contacted all of us. Okay?
I mean, it's yeah.
Because I want to be called select.
Because it's the year
Don't
two.
give her my number.
You want to be called what?
Never mind,
Select
it was
babes.
inappropriate.
Yeah. She can certainly talk to us, but I
Can we move to minutes?
Yeah.
Everybody's done with future agendas?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So I move that we approve the minutes of Tuesday, June 11th, 2019, as amended.
Second.
All in favor? You could now. I'll let you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Can you do this at the mic,
Oh, yeah, you have to go to
please?
Mike, yeah. I can always,
Thank
yeah.
you, so I can hear you.
And it's only because you come to meetings regularly that I'm letting you do this.
And stays till the
That's
very
because I'm an elected official in
Yeah.
Florida. and
Yeah.
Same things.
Yeah.
One thing that you might want to look into, there's a multitude of states that have national parks in them that I know that town of Wellfleet only receives about $170,000 a year from the national park out of the money they put. They're approaching the government because they have a businessman in the office now, and they're threatening and rattling sabers to sue to get more money because they took 70% of our land in 1960 and retroactively back to 58. Because my grandmother was one of the first, she was the first woman on the National Park Advisory Board here. So you might want to look into that and just explore that possibility with states like Utah, places that have huge parks in them. They're looking into that to see if, there's any viability to it. Because any money we can get from the government,
Maybe we can get land for the bike trail.
Can I just respond to that? Tim, that's a great idea. I'm a, I guess, defunct member of the Advisory Commission now. It was a great honor to serve on that. This particular administration in Washington, I don't see them really paying it forward to the national parks right now.
and I understand your point, sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, don't go, yeah.
Bring it up, so that, there are
Yeah.
some states, it may be the time to move forward with it, because, the top dog definitely is a businessman, he probably won't give you $1, but maybe he will because he understands what we want.
Well, and the thing with all of these things about getting money is it takes years. No one says, oh, okay, I'll give it to you next week. It all takes years. Act of Congress, possibly from the National Seashore. So that's a good idea. We can look into that. Couldn't hurt, couldn't hurt.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anybody want to move to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
I move that we